We're not talking about each other.
All set, Denise? All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please, if you will stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, can we have the roll call, please?
Here.
Mr. Derek Motlett?
Here.
Mr. John Moody?
Here.
Mr. Christopher Poole?
Here.
Mr. Chris Williams?
Here.
Chairman Charles Gray?
Here. And the proof of publication, please?
The items were advertised in the Tampa Bay Times on September 20th, 2023, October 18th, 2023, and January 24th, 2024, or by affidavit of certified mailings and site postings.
All right, thank you very much. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the October 19th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay. So I'd like to welcome everybody today, and also just mention that we have a guest today on the dais. David, would you like to introduce your guest?
Yes, Liz Smallwood is a extern in our office from Stetson. She's helping us for the semester with some projects, and she's getting a first-hand experience of what it's like to be with the Planning Commission. So hopefully you all don't offend her today.
We'll try not.
We'll try our best.
Please
not
be
to.
on your best behavior. Thank you.
That's asking a lot, David. You know that. Yeah.
But she's not voting today.
Yeah,
As much
okay.
as you all would like her to, she's not voting.
Okay. Well, thank you and welcome. So we're the Planning Commission. We're appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and we meet twice monthly. We serve as the local planning agency, and we hold public hearings and transmit to the Board of County Commissioners our recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, land development code amendments, rezonings, and conditional use requests. The Planning Commission is also the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, and certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. So if you, anyone here is in opposition to a recommendation that we make to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend that Board of County Commission meeting, and we have those dates available if you need it. So for those of you who are not familiar with the format of our meetings, the procedures are as follows. We have 3 sections. We have continuances, we have consent items, and we have regular items. Continuances are normally where the staff or the applicant has requested a continuance for any number of reasons, and it's been our custom to grant those continuances unless there are extenuating circumstances. Then there are consent items. Those are the items on the agenda that we have not received any objections to, letters or calls or notifications of objections or any objections by the staff. Those items will be read one at a time, and then if you have an objection or you'd like to have it discussed in full, raise your hand when we bring it up, and we'll pull it from the consent agenda and put it on the regular items. Those are the items that are fully vetted, and we'll talk about them, and the applicant will have an opportunity to make a presentation, and then anybody in the audience will have an opportunity to come up and ask questions or state their concerns. The applicant then can respond specifically to those concerns. The times are limited to 3 minutes for the presentation, 3 minutes for the questions each for each person, and 5 minutes for the response to the questions. If there has been a request at least 24 hours prior to this meeting in writing, we may grant additional time, and I don't think we've received any requests, have we, Denise?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, so this would be a good time to silence your phones. If you have a phone with you, please put it on the silent position so we don't interrupt anyone that's speaking before we start a regular meeting. We want to open the meeting for public comment on anything that's not on today's agenda. Is there anyone here to speak on something that's not on today's agenda? I don't see anyone. So if you plan to get up and speak today, I'd like you to stand now, raise your right hand, and be sworn. Anybody that's going to speak.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
Okay. So when you do come up, you'll be asked to state your name and address, and then give the information that you have.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development. First item is item PC2, which is PDD 247683. It's a zoning amendment in the name of Crossways MPUD, Crossways 301 LLC. The request is to continue the item to the March 7, 2024 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
Okay. Request for a continuance. Is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? See no objections. I think we have another one, right?
Yes. Next item is PC3, PDD 247639, zoning amendment, Timber Ridge MPUD, Master Plan Unit Development, Timber Ridge Dade City LLC. The request is to continue the item to the March 7, 2024 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
All right, is that applicant present? Anyone here to object? All right. Thank you. Next one.
Following item is PC4, PDD 247766, special exception, Harvester United Methodist Church, Inc. The request is to continue the item to a date uncertain.
Okay. Is the applicant present? All right, anyone here to object? See no objections?
Mr. Chair, there's one last request for continuance that was just, that just came in, which is for the following item, which is PC 5.
PC 5, okay. Instead of consent, it's on. for
The applicant
continuance.
has requested a continuance. There might be some issues with the notice,
Okay,
the mailed notice.
all right.
So PC 5 is PDD 247765, zoning amendment, Dempsey and Daughters, Inc., Dempsey and Daughters. The applicant has requested a continuance to the March 7th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
Mr. Chair, since this one was not advertised as a continuance, I think you need to ask if there's anybody here to speak to it.
Yes, is the applicant present? Anyone here to object to the continuance?
Or anybody that wants to speak to it today that would not be able to be here when it's continued to. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else continued?
No.
All right, so do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the continuous PC2, PC3, and PC5 to March 7th in Dade City, and PC4 to a date uncertain.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries.
Following item is PC 6, PDD 247756. This is a zoning amendment, New River Limit Ltd. Pasco, Hoke Corporation, New River Hoke. It's for a change in zoning from a C2 general commercial district to an MF1 multiple family medium density district for a total of 140 townhomes with voluntarily agreed upon deed restrictions to meet the standards in the PM 26 memo that include monotony controls, buffering, landscaping, and those type of items as included in your agenda memo. It comes to you with a recommendation of approval.
Okay, is the applicant present? Is anyone here to object or speak to this one? Okay,
On this next item, PC 7, you're sitting as the LPA. It is PDD 240018. It's a comprehensive plan amendment, CPAS 2315, Happy Hill Road and Lakeview Drive. It's for a comprehensive plan amendment to the future land use map 2-15 and sheet 15 to change from residential 6 dwelling units per gross acre to OF office on approximately 0.66 acres of property located on the southeast corner of Happy Hill Road and Lakeview Drive. We're asking that you find it consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners.
all right, is the applicant present?
The applicant is remotely, he's online.
Okay, and anyone here to speak to it? Okay,
Following item is PC 8. On this item, you are also sitting as the local planning agency. It's a comprehensive plan amendment, CPAS 2321, Land O'Lakes Retail, for a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment to the future land use map 2-15 and sheet 20 from Res 6, residential 6 dwelling units per gross acre, to Con Commercial and Con Conservation on approximately 7.12 acres of property that's located on the north side of State Road 54, approximately 1 mile west of Land O'Lakes Boulevard. It's the recommendation is that you find it consistent with the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan and recommend the approval to the Board of County Commissioners.
all right, and the applicant is present? Anyone here to object? All right, sir, there's no one here to object. Would you like to say something?
I don't think so.
Okay, fine.
It's just hoosh.
Well, may I just say one or two words? Really not necessarily related to this project. My name is Hush Kubahi. I'm with Northside Engineering, located in Clearwater, 300 South Belcher Road. Just want to state that we truly enjoy working with your staff. You have just wonderful people, and they have never let us down. They're always there to help and assist and do whatever it takes. So I just had to put that word out publicly. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure they appreciate it because they hear the other version sometimes, and it's, so that we welcome those opportunities to hear the good news. Thank you very much. And we agree with you too.
Right.
Mr. Chair, we're going to skip over PC 9. We're going to move that to the end because that's going to have a full presentation for you. So we're going to move on to item PC 10, which is PDD 242104. It's a variance request. Dawn Shirley. It's for an increase in the maximum fence height along the east front property line facing Rock Royal Drive from 4 feet to 6 feet in an R4 high-density residential district. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as included in your agenda packet.
All right. And is the applicant present?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to hear that one.
Okay.
Paul, okay. So we're gonna move on to item PC 11, which is PDD 242105. It's a variance request in the name of Taucus LLC, 15921 Breakwater Lane. It's for a reduction in the required lot size and density to allow the parcel to be rezoned back to AR, Agricultural Residential District. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as included in your agenda packet.
And is the applicant present?
The applicant is virtually present.
Okay, anyone here to object? See no objections.
And that concludes your consent agenda.
Okay, so do I hear a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
I think we pulled one, right? Or not? Yeah, we pulled one. So we
So that'll be,
making the motion subject to the modification.
so that'll include items PC 6, PC 7, PC 8, and PC 11.
Correct. All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Liam
Good
Devine.
afternoon,
Planning-
Mr. Devine. How are you?
Good. Planning and Development. This is PC 10. PDD 24-2104 in the name of Dawn Shirley. It's a variance request for an increase in the maximum fence height along the east front property line facing Rock Royal Drive from 4 feet to 6 feet in an R4 high-density residential district. The subject site is located in the West Market area and urban service area and is outside of the rural areas. Here's some context for you. Here's an aerial view. The surrounding future land use to the north is Res 9 and CL. To the east, south, and west is all Res 9. The surrounding zoning, R4 and AC to the north, and to the east, south, and west is all R4. The subject site consists of a single-family dwelling and approximately 0.12 of an acre. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow an increase in the maximum fence height on the east property front from 4 feet to 6 feet. It is a corner lot. If approved, would allow the applicant to bring the existing 6-foot tall vinyl fence that is currently in the Rock Royal right-of-way along the eastern property. Once moved out of that right-of-way, it would be then in conformance on the eastern property front. On October 5th, the applicant received an ordinance violation warning that the fence must be 4 feet in height on a front setback on the frontage. On January 18th, 2023, the applicant received a citation from Code Compliance that property remains in violation with a 6-foot high privacy fence on a double frontage lot. On June 23rd, the court heard the local ordinance violation and received a judgment to fix the violation within 120 days. There was a time extension that was agreed on by both parties. And on August 22nd, the Board of County Commissioners approved a waiver of fees for the fence height variance that you're hearing today. This is what the variance would grant if approved. And this would be without the variance. And this is coming with a recommendation for approval with conditions as provided in your agenda packet.
All right, thank you very much.
Do you have any questions?
What questions do we have from the dais?
So the reason I wanted this pulled, it was really not because I have a problem with it. I think she absolutely should have the 6-foot fence on the side of the house. The issue I had with it is, I don't see how that's a variance. It came as an ordinance that, or it came as a violation to an ordinance talking about a double frontage lot. She does have a double frontage lot with the road behind the house as well as in front of the house, and it clearly states in that ordinance that there's a limit to 4 feet in the front, and then 6 feet is fine on the back side, on that back frontage. So the way the ordinance was written saying there's a violation of that, which there wasn't. There is no ordinance, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no ordinance I can see that governs a corner lot. So she also has frontage on the east side of the property, which is the piece in question that's the 6 feet. The only thing I see was, ordinance 1003.3C that says the side or rear can be 6 feet. I know there's another issue with the fence being built on the county right-of-way, and so I understand that has to be fixed. It looks like to me that was an error from the fencing company, and I can see where they calculated it wrong when they drew it. But I don't see how it's a variance, because there's nothing saying that it can't be 6 feet on the side of the property. There's no difference with corner lots that I know of.
The section that you're referring to?
The fencing section is 1003, I think 3.1.
So is there some definition of double frontage? Because I think.
Yeah, it was somewhere else.
So when one has a corner lot, one is considered in the land development code to have 2 front yards and 2 side yards. But I don't know, is there a specific definition of double frontage somewhere that you're referring to?
In her case, she has a road on 3 sides.
3
so,
sides.
Yeah. So that's why this is the question.
She's a 3 front lot.
Right.
Or a through lot with double frontage.
Right. And I don't see there where it's defined, double frontage is defined, I forget where, but it was defined as a road that is parallel to the road that goes in front of the front door. So the one in question is a road that's perpendicular to the road that goes in front of the front door, not parallel.
So if I may, so first off, it could be, it doesn't say that it has to be that way, that perpendicular or non-perpendicular. And secondly, we did do a remedial amendment to land development code, so now it reads on corner lots and double frontage lots, gates, fences, and walls shall not exceed 4 feet in height in the front yard that is parallel to the principal building line of the residence where the front door is located, or in the front of the dwelling unit. So that remedial amendment fixed that situation in the land development code.
Was that
and secondly,
was that just recently?
yes, but we were told remember the court found her guilty, and they did say that the way to fix it is to come through for a variance. So that's why we're here. So, and secondly, that has always been, there's precedent set in that is the way that code has been interpreted. Thirdly, there's a section in the land development code that explains that a corner lot is considered a lot that's a double frontage lot. So when you get a setback on a corner lot, for example, I know she has a triple frontage, but when you get a setback on a corner lot, you have to meet 2 fronts and 2 sides. So you get 2 front setbacks and 2 side setbacks. So we're here because the court said in order to fix this, she'll have to work with the county, and the work with the county is doing a variance, so that's why we're here. And we're not recommending against the variance. As you saw, the Board of County Commissioners waived the
Nor am I.
fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why we're
I'm
here.
just wondering how we got here, because it's obviously unclear in the ordinance the way it was written for a situation like this. And so it seems like it wasn't being applied properly. The only thing I saw was just governing side and rear lots, or side and rear lot lines can be 6 feet.
Yeah, the code, as I stated, reads the way that was adopted towards the end of last year.
Was the applicant offered an opportunity to pursue a variance before
Yes,
going
absolutely,
forward?
yes, she was.
So the code, the one you just read was the fix.
The fix, just to clarify, because there is precedent set for interpretation. That way, when we interpret something in the code, we don't want to continue to interpret things. We want to make it clear in the
Right.
code, and that's why we
Of course.
for the code.
And so the code now says that corner lots
Yes.
have to have have 4 feet on the side
That
as
is
well?
correct, along the front.
For a corner lot.
And just to let you know, and I do feel really bad for Miss Shirley,
I do
because
too.
this is because someone else in the subdivision received a similar notice, and that person then went ahead and turned her in, and I feel really, really bad about that. So this is how this came to pass.
Okay, well, for what it's worth, I mean, on a side lot, you should still be able to, even if it's a corner lot, you should have, on your side, you should still be able to have 6 foot, but that's just my opinion, and, you know. if the board
And under
has
the
permission
code,
to-
you just have to meet the front setback in order to get that. You just have to meet the
Right,
front
yeah,
setback.
but it's just, on a lot that size, it's impossible.
Yes, that's another thing that we really struggled through, because the house was built like in 1972. The lot, it's what we call a small lot of record, predates the code. So that's why you see a lot of the things set back in the way they are, but the code says that any new things have to meet the current code.
Right.
Okay, so we have a hand up there. Are you the applicant?
I'm not, her neighbor though.
Okay, would you like to come up and speak?
Well, you probably should let the applicant speak first, if the applicant.
She said she was the applicant.
Are you representing the applicant?
Oh, no, I am the applicant.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, if you give us your name and address, please.
Dawn Shirley, 3131 Rock Valley Drive, Holiday, Florida, 34691.
Thank you.
The only thing that I really wanted to add is the moving it in the 5 feet, the way, like you had just said, the way the house and the property was constructed, there's not a lot of room on the side. When I bought the house, there was already a pool in the backyard, and there's already pool pump equipment that goes out beyond the point where I'm even allowed a fence. So if I do have to move my fence in 5 feet, which is the criteria to get approved, I'm gonna have to pay to have my whole pool pump redone in order to have a fence that protects me on the side of my garage door and in my backyard.
So that pump has been there for a while.
It's been there for 15 years, I think.
Okay.
So that pump, because it looks like you have a 5 foot setback on the side, on both sides. So it's a 60 foot wide lot, and it's a 50 foot wide house. So it looks like you're about, I looked at the survey, it looked like it's about 5 feet on each side.
Yeah.
So does the pool pump equipment come out past that 5 feet?
Yes.
So is it the fence that comes in, because there's a little fence around the pool pump, is it the fence that comes out past it, or is it the actual equipment?
The actual equipment.
Okay.
Which side is it on? Is it on the?
It's on the east side.
The east side.
Yeah.
You can kind of see the little fence, it's by the white square, that's where the pool pump and the fence is. The reason, so I only moved the fence out enough to get my lawnmower through to mow the backyard.
Mhm.
And I made sure that the fence was far back from the front of the house in order to not, I did my due diligence and I read the code exactly how you read it, that I could have a 6 foot fence on my side yard. I even called the county, the fencing company called the county. Both of us were given the same answer. I didn't know it was gonna be an issue at the time, so I didn't even think to write down a name of a representative. I didn't think it was gonna be an issue. So when I called, I said, how far from the center of the road do I need to have my fence? They said 20 feet. Travis with Prestige also called. He was told 20 feet. Through this last almost year and a half of going to court and hearings, the only thing that I can think of why we were given that information was when the representative was looking at the code. One of the drawings showed 20 feet on a corner lot, but that was for the site triangle, which I did meet. And the only thing I can think of is they were looking at that and telling me 20 feet from the center of the road as a misunderstanding.
That's what it looked like to me.
But that's thousands of dollars.
But you have a big right-of-way on the back.
Yes.
That your fence meets that, it meets the property line on the back.
Yes.
Did you have a survey done when the fence
Yes.
was put up?
Yes.
So before the fence was put up, and
Yes. Yeah, when I was purchasing the home, I had a survey. The survey was given to all three of the Pasco County licensed fencing companies that gave me quotes. I'm a new homeowner. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so I was under the impression I was doing everything that I needed to. So that's why when I called and they said 20 feet from the center, Travis called, he was told the same thing. And so
yeah. Unfortunately, the survey takes precedent over that where your
Right.
actual lot line is. So it was on them that they built it over the lot line, the fence company, especially if they had a survey ahead of time. So regardless of what they say setbacks are on the road, you can't build past your lot line. So that's just for your information.
You should probably be talking to your fence company about making them
Correct.
put it back the right way, because I agree with the commissioner, this was their fault. They should have followed the survey.
Especially if
I
they
get
had
the
it
point
that time.
about the height, but the fence company should know where the survey line is, so they're keeping the fence on your property.
Right. And that's
So-
what was a little confusing to me, because there was three. It wasn't just one, it was three that didn't
My
say
opinion, your
anything.
fence company made a mistake.
Right.
Same here. That I actually looked at the little hand drawing that they had, and when you take the measurements, because they can measure on site that even without a survey, they could figure out it was wrong, because they can measure the house as 50 feet wide, and they have 5 feet on one side and they have 9 feet on the other, which would give you 64 feet across the back.
Right.
But they had clearly written on there 60 feet across the back.
Right.
So they were off, on that originally.
Right.
So I would get with them to
To see if they can.
to rectify that part of it, to move it back onto your property line.
Okay.
But what about the pump? That's been there for 15 years.
How
Well,
far over is that pump? It looks like it's
So
0.4
according to the
0.4 feet?
survey, it looks like it's 1.2 feet.
1.2 feet?
Over the line.
Yeah, I can't-
Roll this up a little bit. The corner of the fence is 3 feet east and 1 point, I'm sorry. Copy, so it's blurry.
It's a 3-foot tall fence.
Oh, it's a 3-foot fence and it's 1.20 feet east of the property line.
So, can I ask Liam a question about that? So, your condition of approval requires the removal of the fence out of the right of way. It doesn't really address the pool equipment. What is the county's position on that? About whether that needs to be moved, or,
Otherwise, there'd be a gap in the fence around the pool equipment.
So from my understanding, and as Don Shirley just stated, that it was her knowledge that she was gonna have to move that out of there as well to then be able to put that fence there. That's not in your conditions of approval. If that is a condition you would like in there, that would have to be removed and not in the county right of way, and we can certainly add that as a condition.
Well, I'm trying to figure out a way to be less onerous
Right.
on her.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Not more so.
Right.
but I was just asking, is it your position that it needs to be moved?
Yes, it's in the county right of way. So,
Okay.
and not my area of expertise, but I would imagine you would have to have some sort of license maintenance agreement to have anything in the county right of way. So it shouldn't be there.
But it would have been there if she
Been
wouldn't
there.
have put up the fence.
Yeah.
So that when the county acquired the right of way, they assumed that they knew that there was something already there.
Well, I don't know when the county acquired this right
Well,
of way.
right.
We could have acquired it before the equipment. We don't know the facts about when that was put in.
That's true.
So
It's
this
been
was
platted.
platted, and
Right.
so the county acquired the right of way via plat. And
When did you purchase the home?
Sorry,
It's built in the 70s.
2022.
So that was existing, I would think that would be something that you show in the survey when you purchase a home too. It's something your title insurance, or your title company should look at.
Did you
Yeah, I
get
believe it
a
was-
survey when you purchased it?
I'm sorry?
Did you get a survey when you purchased your home? You did?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Good.
Yes, I did have a survey when I purchased the home, and I believe the previous owner did leave me a lot of the paperwork on what was done, and I believe the pool was built in 2012.
Was the survey the same survey that's in our agenda package? Or is it?
That's what it looks like.
Yes.
Just because, Derek, just because she's got a minor encroachment into the county
Right.
right away, the title insurance company wouldn't have flagged her property
Especially if
as
it's
having
noted
a
as a-
cloud on title or some question
Yeah.
of whether she had. clear
Especially if it's just a
title to the
fence.
property.
That's why I was wondering if
They
the,
generally insure over encroachments like this on a routine basis.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, part of the issue is you're here on a fence variance, and the only condition of approval is to move the fence. I'm not sure you have enough facts to be, you're not even really being asked to make a decision about what to do with the pool equipment. So
Right.
my recommendation would be to just, she have a separate meeting with the county to figure out if there's something she can do about the pool equipment. And maybe there could be a license and maintenance agreement, but we don't know when that was permitted. We don't know if the county permitted it in that location. There's a lot of facts we don't
right,
have on the pool equipment. So my recommendation would be that you just approve the variance as is with the condition to move the fence, and then she'll have to have a separate meeting with the county to do with the pool equipment.
and it may be very possible, once you take that fence down around the pool equipment, you may be able to squeak it by, because that fence looks like it's out just a little bit from the pool equipment, so that's something you can work on. So,
Maybe her fence company, who was clearly at fault here, would help her with the cost of moving that, since
that should have came up when.
they're the
fence
ones
was
that got her
redone.
in this pickle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a clear error in writing in their proposal, so.
Well, I know there's some precedent for granting a variance for something being in the right of way. It's been there for a number of years. And at least I'm aware of at least one that was given. And, I mean, it really pains me to,
Well, me too, but the one problem that she's got is if she wants to put the fence on the property line at 6 feet tall.
Right, then you have a-
Either way, it's in the way of the fence. So
Right.
it's really kind of moot point.
Yeah, otherwise you'd have to be over the property line by a foot or whatever, and we'd be back in the same problem, so.
I don't know, I just question for county staff, can a license and maintenance agreement be issued to allow a fence to go a foot into the county right away? Just as you
Especially
might
with no permanent
landscaping
footers
or
or anything.
the pool equipment as we're talking about it?
Yeah, it's just a fence, it's not, I mean, it's no permanent, it's PVC fence, so it's not concrete footers or block walls or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, part of the issue we have here is that there's a separate process to use the county's right of way, which that's granted usually by staff or, you know, a real estate department or right of way use permit department. So that's not something that you all would decide anyway.
Right.
Is how, just circumstances under which somebody can use the county's right of way. So,
Maybe she could ask them to vacate the right of way around the pool equipment.
which also is a separate process that goes to the Board of County Commissioners. So I mean, there are probably ways to address her issues with the pool equipment, but they're not ways that this group can do anything about.
Well, before you do any of that, looking at the pictures, and Shirley, you provided, it's tough to see in the pictures, obviously, but it looks like you might have over a foot inside of there to your physical pool equipment. There might be some plumbing that needs to be redone or something like that. Again, it's really tough I'm trying to look through your fence, your wooden fence here, but that would be your first step to see if you do have that
I can
clearance.
tell you from personal experience, I know you're a surveyor personally, and I'm certain he could drop by and put his little GPS pole on your pool equipment pad and tell you whether or not you got a problem in 10 seconds, and he'd probably do that out of the goodness of his heart. He's a nice guy.
Yep. I think you might have enough room there,
Yeah, it looks like you do.
so.
Cute dog too, by the way.
But,
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's in the picture.
Oh, thank you.
Twice.
but, you know, for what it's worth to the county commission, I'm glad that the ordinance was repaired. But, you know, I take personal issue with the fact that now that, you you know, you still have to get a variance if you want to have a 6-foot fence on the side of your house on a corner lot. So, just for what it's worth. They'll hear this coming from me. So, that's all I had. I just wanted to try to help.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay. Anything else from anyone else? Yeah. No, please state your name and address.
Hi, I am Marcy Delgado. I live at 3142 Rock Valley Drive, which is kitty corner to Dawn Shirley's home. First I'd like to thank you for letting me come up, but there are so many houses in our neighborhood on corner lots that have 6-foot privacy fences. On my walk, I count over 100. This young lady bought this house, she's fixed it up, she's done beautiful work to it. The fence is sitting back, it doesn't block any right-of-way, any roadway, anything like that. And I personally think that this was a vendetta from the gentleman who got caught by the county when he put up a brick wall and then a 6-foot fence, so he had a 10-foot fence. And he busted a water main. And that's how he got caught by the county when he was digging. And as a result, he turned in all the neighbors within like a 3-block radius of him. There are hundreds of homes in our neighborhood that have 6-foot fences on corner lots that literally go right out to the corner and block right of way, everything else. So I personally feel like this should be approved and allowed. I mean, her property is beautiful, she's doing everything right, and I just take great offense to the fact that because one man had a vendetta, this is happening to her. I think if you're gonna set a precedence with her fence, then the county code enforcement needs to go around and violate every single corner lot with a 6-foot fence so that it's a fair precedent, because it's not a fair precedent as it stands. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, anybody?
Yeah, I think we're all in favor of approving, you know, it's, again, the spirit of the law, it should, you know, that variance makes sense. So, now building across property lines, that's a different story.
I get
And
that.
those, you know, those still need to be addressed, you know, it's,
Yeah.
but.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like you have a good neighbor at least.
Or one good neighbor.
Yeah, at least one.
I represent the whole neighborhood except that everything's at work today. I'm the only one that's not working.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak? Mr. Devine, would you have anything else to say?
I have nothing else to say.
You've caused enough trouble.
He solved it, the code enforcement did it.
Okay, so what's our pleasure?
I'll move to approve item PC 11.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying
Oops,
aye.
I'm sorry, I called, was that the?
PC
that's
PC
10.
PC
10, yeah.
Sorry.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion
For what it's
carries.
worth, sorry for what you've gone through.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you pulled it.
It was more to bring this issue up.
Liam Devine, Planning and Development. This is P12. I will wait for my
Well,
card.
okay.
This item may seem familiar. I believe we heard this item back in November of last year. So I'm gonna recap and go over some updates. So this is PDD 24-7744 in the name of Daywood, Haney, and Nemetown, Armene. It's a Euclidean rezoning amendment from R3 Medium Density Residential District and C1 Neighborhood Commercial District, and it's a change of zoning to C2 General Commercial District. The future land use classification is Res 9 under the comprehensive plan, and the applicant proposes to develop the property with a 5,000 square foot maintenance shop and auto repair, auto garage, in conformance with the C2 General Commercial District standards. The subject site is located in the southwest corner, of State Road 54 and Shaw Drive. The subject site is located within the East Market area and is outside of the urban concentration and rural areas. Here's some context maps. Here is a zoomed in aerial of the subject site. I will note at the last time this was presented to Planning Commission, there was some concerns from the public that talked about shipping containers on the site. Those are on the adjacent site. There was a code enforcement case on that that's currently open, and the applicant has had a pre-application meeting, but that is not related to this subject request. The surrounding future land use to the north, east, south, and west is all Res 6. The surrounding zoning to the north is R3 and C2. To the east is R3, C2. To the south is R3 and R1 MH, and to the west is C2. The subject site is undeveloped on approximately 0.86 of an acre, and we last heard this on November 2nd. So I'm going to go over some of the added deed restrictions. Since you last heard this, last time it only had the live local deed restrictions. Here are some of the deed restrictions that have been added. The applicant shall prohibit access to Waverly Avenue. The owner/applicant shall provide a 6-foot-high opaque fence along Waverly Avenue. The applicant shall provide a type B buffer with shade trees every 20 feet between the fence and Waverly Avenue. The hours of operation shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sunday through Saturday. And the following uses are prohibited: car washes, gas stations, drive-through restaurants, self-storage facilities, freestanding RV and boat storage, C2 conditional uses and special exception uses as listed in the land development code. And then the live local language as well. This is coming with a recommendation approval for it, but we do have 2 alternative motions. The first alternative motion is a recommendation for denial of the subject request to C2 and approve for C1 neighborhood commercial districts, which would require the applicant to submit a special exception use for a repair garage. Alternative motion number 2 would be to deny the rezoning request. Do you have any questions for me?
So why did it not come as a special exception to begin with? As opposed to, I think we talked about it before.
So the original request has always been to C2. They wanted to go C2 and just rezone the whole property. It's already C1. There is a portion of the site that is R3 that wouldn't allow that. That was actually discovered as an error as a Pasco mapper. I believe that is finding of fact number 10 or 11 there. During the review of the rezoning to C2, staff found that error, so they would have to rezone the property anyways to get that use. Why they didn't choose to go to special exception, I'm not sure. That was offered in the pre-application meeting they held for this rezoning.
Okay. So that piece, it's on the southwest, or the west side of the property, correct? Southwest side of the property?
Yes.
And what's the land being used as today?
So code enforcement did go out to the site. What it's currently being used as, it does look like there's some vehicles parked there, but I did check last week that there wasn't any, I didn't see any code violations open currently.
Okay, so I guess
I do know code went out and visited the site.
And so are there cars being stored there?
There are vehicles being stored, but you can ask the applicant as well, the property owner.
And that's not a code violation in the C1?
If they are storing there, that would be a code violation.
But he hasn't been issued a citation?
Not that I'm aware of.
And they visited, so they made an investigation, determined, I guess.
The question goes to the deed restriction. One of the restricted uses was open boat and RV storage, and I'm just trying to figure out how's the difference between having boats and RVs stored there than having junk cars or whatever it is that's stored there.
Wasn't there a question of towing also?
I remember that last time we talked about it.
There was a question of towing. Code enforcement did go out there. The owner explained to code enforcement to what was relayed to me. Not code enforcement, I didn't cite him for anything. So that he did have a towing service business there. He no longer does. And that was what was explained to me. However, in your deed restrictions of the prohibited uses, towing service is a conditional use under C2, so the deed restriction prohibits C2 conditional uses. So the applicant wouldn't be able to come in for a conditional use for towing services. So that would be prohibited.
If I may, to answer some of the questions, and I know we're looking at aerials and things like that, there is a note from code enforcement, from the officer in the case that states, I arrived at the subject location and observed the storage items have been removed from the subject address, and then states the parcel number. The parcel is now vacant, and then he attached some photographs.
That's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
And so to clarify my question, so that piece is still Res 3, it's still zoned Res 3?
Sorry,
Or-
just
or-
that small portion, give me one more slide here. Can we actually turn on Pasco Mapper and turn on the zoning map? Sorry about that. Yeah, so that small portion that you saw that was a little niche, that is Res 3.
So there's an error in our packet then?
There, on that visual, yes, and I can certainly update that visual, and I apologize for that, but it is corrected on Pasco Mapper, and just for the sake of things, I can certainly read the finding.
Okay. So then now that,
That's stated.
that makes sense to me why there's a whole rezoning, because we
Yep.
need to get that Res 3 portion out.
Correct. Yeah, and just to clarify, I'm going to read it. It's finding fact number 10. On July 28th, 1981, the BCC approved Planning Commission staff's recommendation to deny the rezoning from R3 to C2 and approve for C1 except for lot 21 of the subject site, which remained R3 medium density residential district. During the review of the subject application, this rezoning, an error was found in Pasco Mapper that showed the whole site as being C1, including lot 21. GIS and PDD staff had corrected the error in Pasco Mapper.
Okay.
Can I ask Sam a question?
Yeah.
So Liam, given all these prohibited uses in finding E, what is left? I mean, what is it they're allowed to do under C2 that they would not get in C1?
Okay, sorry.
I mean, you have a very specific list of excluded C2 uses.
Yes.
So is the only use left for which they could get, the only C2 use left that they could get, is it auto repair or are there others?
So C2 uses, I don't have the whole list, so Denise can pull it up. So they'll still be all allowed as C1 permitted uses and special exceptions, and then everything else that's listed in C2. I don't have that list in front of me, but it's quite extensive and.
Okay, so there are a number of other uses.
A number of other uses. That
Okay.
C2 conditional uses and special exception, and I actually wrote some down, would prohibit private schools. That would be a special exception use. It would prohibit towing services. It would prohibit pain management. It would prohibit a conditional use for multifamily. It would prohibit flea markets, which is a conditional use. It would prohibit transfer stations. It would prohibit a special exception for travel trailer parks. So those would be conditional uses or special exception uses that would be prohibited. But everything else that's listed as a primary principal use in C2 would still be allowed, except for the ones, except for car washes, gas stations, drive-through restaurants. Restaurants would still be allowed, just no drive-through. Self-storage facility and freestanding boat and RV.
Yeah, it looks like all the nearby properties on State Road 54 is all C2 as well, so it makes sense.
And which property had the shipping container on it?
So if you actually,
In the aerial.
sorry, let me see if I can turn off zoning. It's actually that far, actually you can see some of the shipping containers now. That's not what it looks like today, but there were shipping
one right there.
containers there. That is an open, active code compliance case. They did have a pre-application meeting, I want to say about 4 or 5 weeks ago.
And are all those gone today?
Those are still currently on the site, but they did have a
But all the
pre-application.
stored cars on this site are gone.
From what code compliance stated, yes.
Okay.
So the only thing left on there are the shipping containers.
Which is not part of the subject request. That's on a
Right.
different site.
It's on a different property, yeah.
Is it the same owner or same ownership?
It is,
It's a different owner.
it's under a different name, but I believe it's the same owner, but you can ask the applicant that.
All right. Anything else for Mr. Devine? All right. And the applicant's present? Would you like to speak, or would you like to wait to see if anybody has questions?
I would love to speak.
Okay. You'd state your name and address, please?
My name is Hani Dawood, and my address 324 Evening Breeze Loop, Worcester Chapel. I just have a little correction because I wasn't there the last time, and with the highly respect with my neighbor, they just say something is not very accurate. Because they says, since I bought that property in 3 different pieces. That one in the side, and that one time, and that one time. So first one right there in the 54, that's a C2. The other one is a C1. The one in the back is R3. So all of them is different property with different houses. So these says I tear the house down with no permission, which is not right. I got permission to do that. I got permit to do that. And the houses, it wasn't house. It was like a mobile home, nothing but rats. No one lives in there. And the last one I bought it, it was 2 homeless people lives in there. After I bought it, I had a hard time to move them out.
Yeah.
So, and all the trees, I cut them off. I cut the tree with the permit. I got permit from the county, and I cut them. I didn't do anything illegal. That's why I'm trying to clarify my situation, because I heard something, it's not right, right? And the reason for his question, I heard the question, why I want to make it C2 and instead C1, I be able to do a mechanic shop, yes, I know. But like I said, it's all messed up. It's like 7 parcels. This property is 7
No, that
parcels.
makes sense.
R3, C1, C2, is like all. So I bought it, one of them is not under my name, it's under my brother's name, but it's mine. So I put one survey for all of them, so I'm gonna move it all of them once I do my project to make it all one parcel. And this project I'm doing, that project, I've been like 1.5 years not working at all for the tow. Like I shut the tow, I moved it somewhere else. So because I'm preparing for that property to make it like a good view mechanic shop or auto repair.
Right.
That's all what I have.
Who proposed the deed restriction language? Is that something you came up with?
The deed restriction?
Yeah. Sorry. William Devine. So we asked the applicant and their team if they would like to add any voluntarily deed restrictions for restrictions similar to what a conditions for a special exception for this kind of use would be. They said they were open to it. Staff did suggest similar language, what was provided in special exceptions, and they agreed to or did not agree to some language, and that's what's provided in your agenda packet today.
Are they in agreement with the ones that are listed in the agenda?
The ones that are listed in the agenda are the ones that they agreed to.
Okay.
So I'll be interested to hear back from the neighbors, but if he wants to build an auto repair shop, I'll ask you while you're here, would you be willing to record a deed restriction that indicates you can't have any bay doors that point towards the residential area to the south of you, and that you won't store any materials behind the building that the residents might be able to see, or you won't do any work behind the building?
Of course. I'm trying to make something nice, not professional, and I don't need the back. The back is Little Road, Waverly Avenue. That one is gonna be a big wall, not the fence. I agree with the 6 foot, that's fine, and the paver and everything, but the building itself is metal building, brand new building, comes from Canada, and it's gonna be 20 foot high, so no one can see nothing, and there's no door in the back. All the door is gonna be in the front, facing 54.
Okay.
That was one of the concerns that was brought up by a resident, was if it was door opening to the back and making noise in the
Right,
neighborhood.
that's what I'm
Absolutely,
saying.
no.
Yeah.
Why would they put door in the back, which is I have the 54?
Okay, so then if you would be willing to deed restrict the property to
Of course.
require that, so that, and I'm not worried about what you already did you already buy the building?
Say again?
Did you already buy the building?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so I'm not worried about the building you would build, it's what some other future owner might do with
Right.
it, if, when and if he ever sells it. I have no
Right.
idea what to sell it, but that's what you'd be looking for, is to protect the neighborhood against something like that in the future.
Yep.
I'm disappointed he bought a building in Canada.
Sir, could you clarify, because the question came up about the ownership of the lot with the storage containers on it. Do you or a relative own that lot?
This one in the corner and down?
This one here?
This
Yeah, the one that has.
This one, it doesn't look like that. That's an old picture. This one, I have another project in that corner. I got 4 shipping containers. I got a picture on my phone I can show if I can share it with that. I'm making like a single house, single home. That's a R3. That's not related to our project now. That's a
I understand that,
different
but I just was curious as to, because it looks like, does it have access through?
From Waverly?
No, does it have, is it only access from the property that's your zoning?
I do
now?
have access from the property. I do have access from Waverly.
Okay, so that one will have access to Waverly.
That it does.
Are you trying to build a home out of a shipping container?
Yeah.
Did you get a permit for that?
Yeah, I already applied. I already applied for the pre-app.
You applied, but were
Yeah.
you issued a permit?
I haven't yet. No, no. I applied for the pre-app because after the last meeting, I got 3 violations for the shipping container to move it from that one, which is I did. This one is clear now. There's no shipping container on it, and the tow company is not working anyway. That's another violation, and they asked me to put a pre-app for that one, and I already did.
Okay, Graham, is there something else?
Yeah, I just want to comment. He talked about a wall. Staff asked for a deed restriction for a wall between, a 6-foot-high wall between the property and Waverly. And I believe he just testified he would be agreeing to that. If that's what he would like to do, we would have to amend that deed restriction. Because right now it states a fence, so it would require him to have a fence. He wouldn't have an option to have a wall if that's where he decides.
So, I'll defer to the planning commission on that issue, but I wasn't done with my line of questions about
Sorry.
the shipping container parcel. So, if it's gonna have access to Waverly, what's to stop you from using that access to Waverly to indirectly get into the repair shop? I mean, there's a restriction here on you using Waverly for the repair shop.
No.
Well, that's what the deed restriction says. It says that it says you shall prohibit access to Waverly for the repair shop. But you said you're not going to use Waverly for the repair shop.
I'm not using it. I put a fence right there. If you look, that's the fence. It's closed fence. That's been.
So
like
is
that
there going to
like
be a
40
fence
years.
between what I'll call the shipping container parcel?
Got it.
So right here, there's gonna be a fence?
Between these 2 properties.
Because
it's
this is a
gonna be a
parcel
fence.
here,
Yes.
and then there's another
In the
parcel
front
here.
of the tow trucks, yes.
So my question is, are you willing to agree in your deed restriction that there would be a fence, not just along Waverly, but also between the auto repair shop and the
And the
parcel?
house.
So
on-
a fence right here is what he's
So,
asking.
well, question.
Because we have a fence here along Waverly.
Maybe Brad Tippin can answer this for us. What's the zoning on the property with the shipping containers?
R3.
It's R3.
All right, and if we're to grant this as C2,
Which is
he'll
right
be
here.
required to have a 30-foot building setback from the R3 property, and he'll also have to plant a type B buffer around that R3 property, is that right? Yes, and the type B buffer includes either a fence, a wall, or a berm, 6 feet
But
high.
are we positive, and maybe Brian needs clarified, that he can't have any vehicular driveway between the two?
Well, no, you can penetrate a buffer with a driveway, but maybe he deed restricted against
Well,
that.
okay, where I'm going with this is he's saying that he will not access Waverly with the auto repair shop. I want to make sure that he can't indirectly access Waverly through the shipping container parcel.
Yeah, he doesn't want you
No.
coming through here
So-
and then out to Waverly.
So I want to clarify, I think there's some confusion here. You'll all see on the right, there's the C1, and then there's the small lot 21 of R3, and then right next to that is another lot that is currently C2 before the shipping container parcel. So there is a C2 parcel that is between
Right
the
here.
shipping container one. That is not part of this subject request. And I believe our code would require a cross connection, and that portion would not have a deed restriction to Waverly.
So, David, could that be fixed by just changing the deed restriction to say he shall not directly or indirectly access Waverly?
From this site.
Right. Just add
Yeah, I
indirectly
think
to it.
that would probably solve the issue. But I want to make sure it's a voluntary deed restriction.
Oh,
I just want to make sure that's consistent with your intent. You're not going to have, for the auto repair shop, you're not going to either directly or indirectly access Waverly. You're not going to access it through these other parcels either.
No, like I said, I've been 40 years, have a closed fence, all Waverly. If you look in Waverly, 4 years, the fence.
Hey, I'm not worried about a direct connection to Waverly. I get that there'll be a fence there. I'm just trying to make sure that since you own these other parcels on the west side,
Yes.
that you're not going to try to connect to Waverly through those parcels.
No, I don't need to.
Okay.
Waverly, like I said, is a little road. I got 54, the main road. Why
So if the
would I
language
use
was
the-
changed, as Mr. Moody said, to say you prohibit direct or indirect access to Waverly, you're okay with it?
I'm perfectly fine. I don't need Waverly. It's like, I don't need.
And so your intention with this parcel here is residential, correct?
That's a residential. There's
Okay.
gonna be access for more.
And then what about
There's
this
gonna be
parcel?
single room.
So this parcel here, what's your intention with that one?
There's a C2.
Correct. So you,
Is it going to be part of the auto repair shop?
No.
What are you going to use it for?
That's what, I used to use it for a tow, but right now it's not usable. It's like, I just put
Okay.
my cars and stuff.
Once you have the auto repair shop up and running, what do you intend to do with that piece in the middle between the residential piece and your auto repair?
Very
shop?
much I'm gonna use that piece for a parking for that mechanic shop, maybe I'm gonna use it for like the front here in the 54. If you look in the front, that's 54. So it's like I don't have a plan for it, but all what I concern, that piece right there, that 0.86 acre, that's gonna be the shop. So
Okay.
this parcel is like completely different than the other one. It's like, I don't need to do nothing for that one. Am I gonna sell it? Am I gonna keep it for something else? But this project right there, this is gonna be a fence. Like if you see the L shape, it's gonna be a fence.
right here?
Yeah, from here, go up and go that way and go that way. It's gonna be fenced. So
This
one's
this
gonna
part will be
different
fenced, this will
size.
be fenced, and this will be fenced.
Yes.
Is that one
Okay.
parcel or two?
It's one,
It's one.
yeah, the L shape, backer,
Yeah.
yeah,
Part
two
of-
different zonings.
The one is, it shows R3, is
It's
that?
one parcel, but it had part
Yeah,
of it
part of
still
the-
zoned wrong.
No, I'm just-
Yeah.
The reason that I ask that is because the code requires cross-access between commercial properties. So even though he has no intent, he says he has no intent to do it, when he does his site plan, he's gonna get told he needs to provide cross-access, which then creates the opportunity that David is questioning about.
He- yeah.
But if he's saying he won't even indirectly access Waverly, I think that cures the issue on access to Waverly. Now, arguably, you don't have a fence on the south side of that piece of C2.
Yeah, there won't be a fence.
I'm not sure if he's
for this
willing to
little
commit to
part
put a
here.
fence there, but, I mean, because it's outside of the zoning area, but,
It is currently 6 foot fence with the tarps, like, currently is a fence.
so, see, even on the piece that,
Even in a piece, yes.
The-
From that corner, if you wave
From here?
all the way, no, all the way to the left, to the left.
To
You have
the
a
fence.
site
To here.
Do you have like a site plan that
Like-
shows what you wanna do
for what?
for the mechanic shop, the auto shop? You said you already bought the building, so you must have created some kind of site plan or something.
Yeah, I do have a site plan.
Is that something you've got here you can show us?
Am I gonna have in the front? Let me go.
David, looking on Google Earth, it does look like it's fenced all the way down Waverly.
With the driveway.
Yeah.
Driveway and a gate on Waverly.
There's a gate there now.
Might have been the old driveway.
So if you can tell
I
them
think people have the site plan, the picture of it. We discussed that last time.
But it looks like it's fenced right across the driveway.
Yeah.
There's no gate there.
hog wire.
Yeah.
Goes too fast.
6 feet.
All right, do we have anybody else that's going to speak on this?
Yes, we have two people that are signed up to speak on the item.
Okay.
Would you like to hear from them?
Yeah, let's see what their questions they have, and then we can bring you back up the answer.
So I've got Christina Nelson and Jimmy Nelson.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Christina Nelson. I live at 37604 Waverly Avenue in Zephyr Hills.
Did you get that? I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Okay,
I'm
that's all right.
Christina Nelson. I live at 37604 Waverly Ave in Zephyr Hills.
Okay.
I am directly across from where he's trying to put the shop.
Mhm.
I know he's saying that he's gonna build a concrete wall. I was here in November about it. I'm so opposed against it. I don't care, you're gonna put a wall up, you're still gonna hear it. My husband's a manager at Midas. You can be over at Wawa in Zephyr Hills across from 54 and you're still gonna hear Midas, the drills and stuff. I don't know if they're gonna get rid of the oil or the transmission fluid correctly and it's not gonna go into the ground and contaminate my well water. I mean, I don't want a mechanic shop right across the street from me. I've been living there since 2012. I mean, I don't know anyone that would want a mechanic shop right across the street from you. I don't have an issue with Raphael. I mean, he's, you know, a good neighbor. I have his number, we text or whatever, but I don't want a mechanic shop across the street. I didn't have an issue with the towing other than he used Waverly Ave. But I do not want the mechanic shop. I don't know what I need to do. I don't know what I need to say to you guys, but
So.
I don't want that.
It's already zoned C1.
I don't know what that means.
Well, okay, well, I'm trying to look up what the allowable uses would be here. C1.
It means commercial.
Right, it's
commercial
it's
uses.
more neighborhood commercials.
Right.
That, the reason for the statement is that some commercial activity can happen on the property, so I'm trying to figure out what it is that you feel like you can live with if he were to develop the property that's not intrusive to you.
So he already said, when I talked to him, he said that, you know, the building that he was making, my husband showed you guys in November or December, whatever it was, the orange building that he made out of the containers. He said he was gonna make like barbershop or nail salon or whatever. I don't have an issue with that. I don't care. I just don't want anything that's noisy. I don't want anything that's gonna leak into the ground, you know? I mean, who would want that? I don't want anything that might contaminate my well water. I don't want it noisy across the street. I have to get up at 2 a.m. for
Well,
work. I mean,
Auto shops are governed by the EPA in terms of what, so that they do have restrictions. They have to make sure that there's containment for oils and things
I
like that.
understand that, but that doesn't mean that people follow it. I mean, there's speed limits. It doesn't mean people do it.
So
You know
there
what I
is
mean?
a.
No disrespect.
So one of the deed restrictions was that it restricted their hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Does that help address your concern?
I'm in bed by 6, so, I mean, I just don't want a mechanic shop there.
Is that every night though? Is that including the weekends or is that weekdays that you're?
I work from Tuesday to Sunday,
Okay.
so yeah.
So, if we were at the county commission hearing, before we had a hearing, what we would hear is the county attorney tell us that when we hold a quasi judicial hearing, that mere public opposition is not allowed, is not a reason for us to turn something down, and that you have to stick to the land development code or the comprehensive plan. So I'm trying to figure out, is there some code requirement that you could cite that you think is being violated or creates some incompatibility?
I mean, I said so much the last time we were here, I've had a concussion since then, so, I mean,
Well, I mean, she did say noise and the fear of contamination.
all right,
So I don't think she's just getting up and saying, I don't want it. I mean, she started there, but then she said her main
But the
concerns
noise, that's a legitimate
are
reason.
noise
Right.
and the potential for ground contamination is what I heard her say.
I
Unless there
understand.
were- I mean, is that accurate? Those are your two main concerns?
Those are my concerns. I understand Raphael got up here and said that pretty much I lied about him cutting down the trees and not having permits, but it's all on record. He got permits after. So, I mean, there's,
Well,
has-
let's put that aside. I think Mr. Moody is asking you, what are your
I'm
what are your
getting-
concerns with the auto
I'm-
repair shop, other than you said noise
Mhm.
and you said the potential for ground contamination?
Right, because there's,
Are there any other concerns, or are those the two main ones?
that's the two main ones. And traffic.
Traffic on, because there's a restriction on them using Waverly, so.
Right, but still shop because the end of it is all messed up and my yard floods, so all the rainwater comes down to my yard.
So you have concerns about them using Shaw also?
All the traffic, it's a lot of traffic.
Wasn't there a wall there too?
Yeah, he said there was a fence on that east side.
Yeah. 6 foot.
And these are letters from the other neighbors that couldn't make it today. Do I get it? So, do I?
Motion to receive and file?
Second.
Just go ahead and hand it to the clerk there.
Do we have to vote on that?
All in favor?
Yeah. All in favor of the receive and file?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
That's all I have
Okay,
to say.
thank you.
Thank
Do
you.
you want to speak as well?
Arguably 5.
Get your name and address too, please.
Jimmy Nelson. I also live at 37604 Waverly. We understand, you know, everything in Zephyr is booming, everything's growing. We're not trying to deter Mr. Raphael from, you know, expanding his business, but we are concerned about our property that's right there where this building is going to go. Our well water is right on that corner pretty much. So we are concerned about, you know, the EPA, you know, with coolant and oil and, you know, contaminants, waste being so close to this shop. The roads are just not right for this kind of traffic to come through here. So we do have some concerns. I know it's not much, but it is our property, we do own it, and we are concerned about it.
Okay.
Do you know if there's water and sewer to his property?
Do I know where it is?
If it is, and he can answer that when he
Oh,
comes
yeah,
back. I'm just
I'm not
curious.
sure. I just know that a couple of those properties used to be houses on them. So I'm sure there is some type of plumbing well in those areas. We're just concerned about our well,
Yeah,
which
I-
will not be far
Understood.
from the shop. So we are
So
concerned.
your well's on the front of your property, you said, right on the corner there?
It's on the corner, yeah.
Any questions?
Are there,
Any more questions?
are there, so are there restrictions as far as if you have those kind of uses next to, you know, I know there is obviously a septic, but as far as next to wells
I
and
really don't
things?
know of any shops that are so close to a house.
So if he had a-
Is there a limit there?
So if we were talking about a wellhead protection area,
Right.
like
Right.
if this were a public water supply
Gotcha.
well, then there would be, might be certain
But a
restrictions.
private
but
well,
Probably not,
so-
so,
No.
private
for private.
residential.
But to John's point, if the property is the property utility served? Or will it be utility served? Anyone that can answer the.
Ataf Hanna with Pasco County Utilities. The property actually is in the city of Zephyr Hills, and
Okay.
we don't have information about the utility system within that area,
You mean the city's Zephyr Hills service area?
service area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Moody, is there a, you're the stormwater expert, so is there special
Sit next to
containment? Yeah. So is there a special containment process that in a situation like this where they would have to do
They
things to
don't
mitigate the
have-
stormwater
An auto
runoff?
shop doesn't have any special stormwater requirements. If, for instance, and a TEF can probably provide you this answer, like, for instance, if he were hooking up to the Pasco County utility system, they might require him to have some kind of oil water separator before he discharges into the sewer and that kind of thing. And that's why I asked the question about utilities.
Right.
To find out what's kind of the hazard risk that, if he's gonna be on well, is he gonna be on well and septic? Where potentially there could be groundwater contamination, or is he going on public utilities where there's lower risk?
Why don't you come on up and maybe you can speak to that?
Also, I can add to that, that he can actually
Speak your name again, please. So that it's
Atef Hanna, Pasco County Utilities.
Okay, thank you.
He has the option of a dry shop as well, which is a little bit of assuring that there will be no contamination or no discharge. And also he has to follow a certain procedure to file reports with the DEP on things like that.
What do you mean by dry shop? Could you
Dry
explain?
shop means like he is containing everything, and actually he is reporting disposal to sites as well. Like everything he uses, and he collects and making sure that it does not really go to his plumbing. And then there is actually a containment as well.
What about runoff from the parking? Because sometimes you have
Yeah.
cars that are damaged, they come into the parking lot, they leak oil in the parking lot.
That's oil grease separator within the parking.
Okay,
And
within the stormwater runoff.
Yeah, stormwater runoff. If he's got the system, and then if he doesn't have the system, he needs to contain it probably in swales and making sure that it doesn't.
Okay, so but you said he has the option of doing that. Does our code require that, or does he?
I have seen, I mean, based on my previous experience on private, actually, I was asked to do in some communities, do that dry shop. So it's actually a more way of assurance.
So perhaps we could add that as a condition of approval.
Well, I just want to make sure, is that the terminology that, I don't have an issue with you doing it as a condition of approval, but, well, first of all, you can't condition it, you'd have to agree to it. Okay, but I want to make sure we're using the right terminology. Is that the
Maybe
common?
we need to look into it. Maybe you need to just bring it back and.
Well, I find it hard to believe it's just called a dry shop. There's probably a better term for what you're describing, but this is not my area of expertise. I don't know if anybody on staff knows how to describe this.
I've heard it before, but I'm not sure. It's about, even when you do the documentation, when you do the MPDES for like oil change, for example, and you mention all the things that will develop from that job, and there are certain
Right, but
things.
is there a set of like DEP regulations or SWIFMA regulations that govern this dry shop that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's the kind of information we would need to know for somebody to write something up, they'd have to say that the shop will comply with X, Y, and Z regulations. Is there anybody that knows what those would be?
I don't know if a auto repair has to get an industrial discharge
Right.
permit or not. It's just something I've never had come
I think
across.
I got an answer for that.
Sir, do you want it? Go ahead.
Yeah, because I've been in the mechanic shop for the last 20 years. So it's nothing in that one, everything contained. The oil, actually we used to sell the old oil, so we don't want to waste it. So the oil is in a container, the antifreeze is in a container, transmission fluid is in the container. You have to. If the code enforcement visit you, you're not gonna like that visit when he see that oil all over the place.
Right.
You're talking about 20 grand violation.
Yeah, the DEP.
So I don't want to do that. So obviously, I'm not gonna put all over the place, because not because of the neighbor, which is I respect the neighbor, I need to do everything like this says. Actually, she asked me for one tree in the middle of the property to not move it, and she can correct that. I did not. She said, because I got squirrel, go there, and it's in the middle. I just left it because I respect my neighbor. So I'm not gonna go just through all over the place, which is money. This West Tire is money, West Oil is money. It's like You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
And
don't
this-
think the concern is so much the oil in the shop, because when you're draining oil out, you're gonna drain it into a container. It's just inadvertent leakage, especially outside,
I
working into the
understand.
stormwater system.
But once you go with the 5,000 square foot building, you don't need to work outside in that weather, rain and hot, so everything is gonna be inside.
Sir, do you intend to have, while vehicles are waiting to be repaired, will any of them be parked outside?
Of course I will, but I'm not gonna have damaged vehicle outside, because if it's damaged, it's gonna go inside the shop. I don't wanna move it 2 times, but the vehicle is gonna be attained outside, they're ready
Is
to
your
go.
entire site gonna be paved, or is part of it gonna be dirt?
Say again?
Is the entire site gonna be paved, or is part of it gonna be dirt?
Some part is gonna be dirt, is gonna be like gravel for just some purpose like that.
So what would stop, say you had a leaking vehicle that was stored outside in the gravel, what's to stop the oil from running off of that?
Or a vehicle that you didn't know was leaking and. you
If I
couldn't move it
didn't
and
know,
turns out
that's
it's leaking.
different, but if I would have known, I would take the oil out of it first.
Right.
And I get the side plan, you got them in the email, if you can show that? It shows paved all around.
You know, from a practical point of view, and we deal with this a lot in commercial real estate, is that it would be foolish for him to do anything that would contaminate his property, because it's gonna affect him later on. One day, he's gonna wanna sell his property, and he's not gonna wanna contaminate his site, otherwise he'll never be able to sell it.
I don't think anybody purposely.
So, I mean,
It's more
I think, I mean, the fact that you might spoil a little oil on your property when you, I mean, his position to me is very strong. He's gonna contain the oil, he's got provisions to contain the oil and all the fluids that come from these cars. And I don't know what more he could possibly do.
I do see from the DEP website that if he's got used oil, he's required to register with the DEP. I
Right.
don't know what's involved in that, and then there's a similar process for waste tires as well, so.
He'd be
something
a
that the
generator.
state does have their hands in, I don't know to what extent. but-
He'd be registered as a generator based on what volume he generates at his business, so it'd be a small quantity or a large quantity or whatever. So yeah, he's gonna follow state level regulations plus EPA. Plus, he's gotta be, have a NIPD's permit like, the utilities, person said.
I assume you're gonna have your building insulated, are you not?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if he has
That's gonna contain the sound.
his building insulated, that's gonna mitigate much of the noise that would come from a building that's fully contained. If you're working outside, that's different, you're gonna hear lots of noise, but if you have an insulated building, you're gonna mitigate the noise. And this property is on State Road 54, it's a major thoroughfare. Nobody's gonna build a house there. So I just think.
Oops, we lost
Can
it.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the side plan.
Isn't that Waverly to the south? Am I looking at it wrong? Am I
South
upside
is to
down?
the left,
At
yeah.
the
it's
bottom,
flipped.
that's Waverly.
So the bay doors are gonna
Oh,
face?
okay.
They
Bay
face
door
54.
Towards Waverly?
Oh, okay, I see.
The bay doors are gonna face 54, you said, right?
Yeah.
Is
Not
that
on that
nor-
drawing.
No,
sorry.
not the way that's
On
oriented.
that drawing, it's not.
Right. That'd be Waverly on the south side
So
Yeah,
this is,
and it looks
this
like
is
an
Shaw.
entrance from
and from Shaw.
Shaw, not
And not
54.
54.
Right, so the bay doors are facing south towards Waverly,
Right,
correct?
correct.
So the bay doors need to be facing the other way,
Right.
facing 54.
So they'd be directly across the street from
And
the residence.
Well,
I understood the access was gonna be from 54, not
I
from,
thought, is this turned?
I have an access from 54 now, but it's gonna cause a lot of traffic with the DOT, so that's why we just decided to make the access in Shaw. I don't wanna use the access in 54, because in 54 now it's too late. I know eventually it's gonna be bigger, but once you get the tow truck, go from 54, make a right to the shop, it's gonna make some traffic. I don't wanna do that, because I had that before. I had this problem, mixed traffic and just very dangerous. That's why we decided to open a gate from shop. So you make a right in shop, make a right in the shop.
I will also add that our access management regulations would generally prefer that
Yeah.
the access from Shaw and not 54.
Right. But then that also gives them the opportunity to run them right down to Waverly.
Well, I mean,
But
there's a
why would they go to
restriction.
Waverly if there's a wall there?
Well,
Where's your stormwater pond on this? I don't see, is there a stormwater pond that's represented on there? Is it just swales, kind of on the south side? Do you see it on there?
I don't see anything that looks like a stormwater pond.
If
But
I
it could
may.
be underground, I mean, one
Yeah,
could be one
could be,
underground.
yeah.
If I may, Planning Commission members, I know that the applicant is in front of you, but there's also a representative online from Beacon Civil, so perhaps they might have some information. So in case Tasir would like to speak, you can unmute yourself if you would like to answer any of the questions that are coming from the Planning Commission.
Yes, please jump in here if you have an answer. To see her, is that you said?
Yes, hello. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, regarding the access to Shaw, so the applicant agreed to improve the road from the 54 from the access of the oil there. And this is also the condition for the substandard road application.
okay, could you answer the question about your stormwater? Where are you putting stormwater in?
This is just a concept plan. We have not did the stormwater or any work on that yet.
And is the building, the arrows are pointing into the building, do you drive through the building? Or do they come back out the same way they went in?
No, it's not
So
driven.
this is an all that concept plan, and we will need to update it. So all the bays that will not be faced residential, it's gonna be on the other side.
I'm gonna ask him, would he voluntarily agree to include that in the deed restriction, that the bays face north rather than south towards
With-
Waverly?
Yeah, with no opening on the south side of the
Right.
building.
Yes, and no activity behind, even though in C2 district, you can't do auto repair outside of an enclosed building, but it happens, so it does happen and things get stored behind the building, so I'd ask him if he'd voluntarily add that stuff to the deed restriction.
I have a question.
Well, that was my understanding, that it was gonna be that way, so I think that's a fair request.
Yeah, fire access, he probably.
Excuse me,
has a man door in the
I'm
back.
sorry, you can't just come up, we gotta keep this thing going.
Yeah,
Some
that's
sort of-
some secondary.
Did you
egress,
ask,
right.
did somebody ask him to come up and speak?
I'll ask him to come up
Okay,
and speak,
thank you.
sir.
Okay, I'm just, my wife brought up a question about, okay, this building's gonna be here. My house is directly where Waverly is, I'm right there.
You're right
Yeah,
here.
so I'm basically there. Okay, Pat's Bar is up a little to the right. And we can hear that noise, and they're gonna be much further away than the shop. So it's just a bad spot for a shop. I know, understand that it's probably gonna happen, we just wanna voice our concerns, It's on record. That's
Yeah,
all.
well, you have every right to voice your concerns. We're trying to accommodate you to the extent that we can, but we have to be reasonable
Yes, sir,
on
I
both
understand.
sides.
Yes, sir.
So what we're trying to do is get that building turned so that there's no openings on the side that faces your house. So.
Well, I mean, this is up to the planning commission, but you also may want to consider some minimum setback. I mean, because even if they put them on the front, if you put the entire building against the back wall, that's probably gonna get more noise than if it was.
That would be a question for Denise. So C2 would have a 30-foot setback from residential, but in this case, he's up against a right-of-way, so. Does that right-of-way count as part of the, how do we, is it considered, is he considered to be up against residential, or is he considered to be up against right-of-way where he doesn't have a 30-foot setback?
He's considered to be up against right-of-way where he doesn't have a 30-foot setback. It would be a 25-foot setback. However, I do want to caution on this one that there is a provision in the Land Development Code that when a lot has a triple frontage, that there is a way to reduce one of the non-principal fronts to no less than half of the required setback. So I wonder if we could, so that this doesn't occur on this situation, perhaps we can include something in the voluntarily agreed upon deed restriction regarding that. Because this applicant can, under section 530 of the Land Development Code, potentially ask us to reduce the setback on Waverly to 12.5 feet, for example. And that would be allowed administratively under the code.
But he's required to provide a 20-foot landscape buffer on the Waverly
That's correct.
side,
So that
would at
that's
least
in excess of
maintain a
that.
20-foot setback.
That's accurate. It's a good point. From the deed restriction, it states that.
And that's between the wall and Waverly, right? The landscape
Yes,
buffer?
that's right.
Yes.
Well,
If I may also add one thing, I just want to touch back. There's also alternative motions. So we're discussing a lot about voluntary deed restrictions. I'm assuming the applicant is volunteering to all that were discussed, but there's also an alternative motion of approving it for C1 and then requiring them to come in for special exceptions where
Where
staff
you can
or
condition
plan,
all these
where you
things?
can condition all these things as well. So I just want to make sure you're aware that there's that option as well in case you want to condition something that the applicant maybe is not agreeing to.
Rather than trying to draft deed restrictions on the fly here?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
That might be the more efficient way of doing it.
well, I just hate to see people having to keep coming back, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we know what we want to ask for, so why don't we just ask for it? You know? We've got a
So I've noted the
Genius
wall
here,
from
but-
my fence to a wall.
Well, I mean,
Correct.
so you can do it by deed restriction, but we need the applicant to come up and sort of,
He has to agree.
each one, you
Right.
have to get them to agree to the language.
Mhm.
So, which, that could be done. You know, Mr. Moody doesn't like voluntary deed restrictions. It can work for this case.
well,
I got
would
one
the
that
applicant-
likes-
Got to write them.
the
I
applicant
got
come
one
up
that likes
again,
them and
please?
one that doesn't, so I'm right in between you.
So why don't we go through the things that we're thinking of, and then he can either say yes, he agrees, or no, he
So,
doesn't.
well, I
agree.
asked him before if he would agree that there would be no overhead doors on the south side of the building, that they'd have to face north, and I think you acknowledged you'd be willing to do that.
Is no door in the back? What is
No,
better?
no, overhead doors. I understand the fire department may make you have a man door in the back for.
I have to have an
emergency
exit, yeah.
access. Yeah, I understand.
I have to have an
And
exit.
no,
But
no
no
overhead
overhead
door where you're gonna, you know, it's
No
not gonna
bays.
be. When you think about a garage, and you're in a garage, and then you got 3 walls and an open door, well, this is a sound funnel going out that door, so we wanna, it would be my preference, it would go north and not disturb the neighbors, and the question is, would you agree to that?
Yeah, I got no
Okay,
problem with
All
that.
right, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, we understand what you're saying as far as that, but this site plan that you're showing just clearly shows that the access is from the south. So your
Would
doors
you-
are facing towards Waverly, so that's a reason for,
The first plan was drive-through building.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's
Come
what's
from that
represented.
side, go from that side.
But you would agree to at least a 25-foot setback from Waverly to the,
To the
to
back
the
side of the
south edge of that building, yes.
Is this the requirement?
Yeah,
Well,
it is if you agree to
I
it.
think Ms. Hernandez indicated that the code allows some request for relief to that requirement, and I'm asking if you would just waive the right to that relief and just agree to 25 feet.
Of course, whatever the book says. Is that
Well,
I don't
well,
want
It has to be you say, because this is a voluntary
Yeah,
deed restriction.
you have to sign this deed restriction saying that you're agreeing to this. So that's why we're asking you the question.
Okay, say, you say.
You can't just say whatever the board says, because they technically, they can't make you do this.
I
That's why-
understand, but I'm
Okay.
going with the requirement. The requirement, she said 25 foot, I go with 25 foot.
So you're willing to agree to a 25-foot rear or setback from Waverly?
Okay.
I don't want to call it rear because I don't know where your rear is on this.
So you mean from
Sorry.
Waverly, from the
From
fence
Waverly.
to the building is 25 foot?
Right,
Of course, I need that place.
okay.
Yes. And then I would ask the last, if you're going to have an auto repair shop, that I noticed that the hours of operation in the proposed deed restriction were 7 to 7, Sunday through Saturday.
Right.
I would ask you if you would make that something like 11 to 5 or 11 to 6 on Sunday. Let's not have 7 to 7 on Sunday, if that'd be all right with you.
And Sunday, I'm not working Sunday, but during the week, I cannot make it a little.
I understand
Yeah.
during the week, and I understand on Saturday. What I'm asking is not 7 to 7 on Sunday. Could we agree on something like?
He's closed on
He's
Sunday.
closed on
Sunday.
Sunday, so make
Okay.
it Monday to Saturday.
All right, so,
Yeah.
all right.
So we'll
it'll
So he
be
agrees to that.
Monday
It's like
through
if
Saturday,
we make it
deed restriction
11 to
Monday
5,
through
that's fine
Saturday.
for me.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
So,
Because, yeah, the condition approval
so-
says Sunday, Saturday through
so he's
Sunday.
agreeing to not have any hours of operation on Sundays.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll work Sunday.
So the one thing that you all kind of danced around, but I'm not sure you really said in your request is outdoor repairs.
Well, they can't do that under C2, correct?
Yeah, it's not allowed under C2 anyway.
Okay, so that's already a requirement?
That's correct,
That all
exactly.
repairs have to be inside
That
the
is
building?
correct, yes.
Okay.
Okay. There was two other things too. So there was also about the indirect access. What-
Right,
Over here.
Direct or
Yeah.
indirect access to
Yeah,
Waverly.
yeah. So we,
Your agreement that we would modify A of your deed restriction to say shall prohibit all indirect or direct access to Waverly?
Yes.
and then the last one was the wall versus the fence.
It's a fence.
It's a fence.
Yeah, the last, that's not the last one. The last one was the control of the.
Well, I'm
any-
sorry, not
any
in order of
fluid
the
or
conditions.
substance.
That was just the
So-
last one on my list.
Let me, and you all the experts on noise, I'm not, but, if hypothetically the fence on the adjacent C2 parcel were removed, is that going to be now a source of visual or noise intrusion? I mean, because technically these deed restrictions only apply to the site you see. It doesn't, so my question is, I understand there's a fence there currently.
So you're talking about the fence over here.
Right, my question, there's nothing that requires him to keep, and these restrictions that requires him to keep that fence up. And my question for you all is, do you want him to agree to keep that fence up?
Yes.
Because if it comes down, I don't know if you still get the same visual and noise screening.
I mean, is there gonna be a fence right here along this line?
Well, currently, there's no restriction, well,
Right.
and to Mr. Moody's point earlier, we actually may require some interconnect.
A connection, yeah, that's
to
true.
to that commercial piece, so I don't know that our code would require a fence between commercial and commercial.
Okay.
So if you want something from a fence perspective, other than the piece in front of Waverly here, you're gonna have to probably put it in this deed restriction. Because technically, he could take down that fence.
Well, and do you own that property, the commercial property immediately to the west that we're talking about?
Yeah,
Right
he
here.
does.
This-
He does.
This is C2, the
He
one
owns it.
out of the box. This one C2.
Right here, it's C2.
And the top of it C2. This all C2.
But you own this one that's C2.
Yeah,
I guess
own
that
both,
may
yeah,
become the
yeah.
stormwater pond that's not shown on this site plan, so putting a fence between them might create a hindrance to that.
But we need a fence on Waverly, we need a fence on Shaw, right?
It's currently, we have a fence in Shaw and Waverly and 54.
And that's
Okay,
what
so
we
there'll be a fence
we
here.
want
But
those to
the point,
remain.
the point I'm
Fence here with the
trying to make to
driveway.
you all is, there's nothing in these restrictions that prevents him from removing existing fences.
Right.
So you can't assume, unless it's in the deed restriction, you can't assume that the
Will stay.
existing fence will stay. The only thing this requires is that has to stay is the fence along Waverly for this site. So if you all want something beyond that, then it probably would have to be in the deed restrictions.
What kind of buffer does he have to have along Shaw?
I got
I think it says 3 every 20 foot.
Yeah, somebody, I got a question on buffering too, if somebody can come up and answer questions on buffers.
Brad, is that
If,
you?
I guess I'll get my question out there first, and I know John's got a question too, but if this was an auto service station, the code would require a type C buffer, is that correct? And the deed restriction, the voluntary deed restriction asks for a type B buffer. I think, personally, I think that should be a type C in the voluntary deed restrictions. I don't think this is that different than an auto service station. It's an auto repair shop.
Of course, that definition may change in the next hearing.
But, I mean, we're voluntary deed restrictions anyways, that's just my opinion. I don't know if,
Sir, do you know the difference between a type B and a type C?
What's different?
Okay, we probably need to get
yeah, it's
Brad up here
it's the
too.
amount of landscaping.
If you're gonna have him voluntarily agree to it, he should know what he's agreeing
Yep,
to.
I agree.
Brad Tippin, Planning and Development Department, at least for a few more days. This is probably a situation where just referencing our standard buffers is not going to be sufficient. What we want to do is reference a buffer, perhaps the type B buffer, but then mandate or request something specific, like instead of just a 6-foot screen, request it to be a cinder block wall or something along those lines. Make some of those very specific changes that we can then impose, because I don't know that the different buffers really fit this situation well.
The only difference I see in the code when I look at the difference between a B and a C is the width, going from 15 to 20, and the tree required every 20 feet in a type C versus every 30 feet in a type B. They both require single row evergreen shrubs. They both require the 6 to 8 foot max opaque fence, wall, berm, or hedge. So, I mean,
Yeah,
he's already agreeing to the 20 feet, but he's agreeing to a B. It just didn't personally
Right,
make sense to me. I think it should be a C.
There's a difference in practice. I know sound quality was one of the issues between a vinyl opaque fence and a block wall or a brick wall.
Sure.
So
Right.
those are the kinds of things that you could make, those decisions you can make here, that you can actually upgrade those buffers
Right.
without really just referencing specifically. You know, an extra tree may not make a difference compared to it being block versus vinyl. Those are the kinds of things that you could do to improve that.
I will point out that here, on this side across from Shaw, this is commercial, but this right here is residential.
Yeah,
Here.
that was the reason that I asked about the buffer.
Corner of the bar.
At the north corner.
Yeah, at the north
correct.
corner here.
Right,
But not south, yeah.
And right next to me for.
But there's a home right
outside,
here.
All the way to the left is an RV park, and he has a mechanic body shop, he does everything, I never been him, just that he's inside the building.
Okay, so
Well,
we need to be
yeah,
specific
so
about the wall.
Well, you all need to decide whether you're okay with the buffer that's in there now for Waverly, but you also need to decide, do you or do you not want anything on Shaw or the portion of Waverly that's outside of this site?
my personal opinion is that he should at least have the same buffer along Shaw that he has on Waverly
I
for
agree.
at least that portion in front of the building and a portion that abuts the residential across the
I
street.
agree.
I understand if there's a bar up on the corner and, you know, he doesn't really need to screen the thing from that, but
Yeah, at least have
So you're
this
probably
portion
talking
of
about
it.
south of his entry point, basically?
That's what it looks
This
like,
here.
yeah.
Fencing here.
South of the driveway?
From the entrance
I
on.
guess
off
so
of
in
Shaw.
legal terms, opposite the residential
Opposite the
zoning
residential
district on the
zoning,
opposite
correct.
side of Waverly.
Okay, but, so you want the same buffer there as you want on Waverly, so then you need, what is the buffer you want on Waverly? Then we need to see if he's in
Obviously.
agreement with all this.
Oh, a block wall would be preferable.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I think you should build a wall.
We've had situations before where we've made them build walls, so I think
Well,
that's.
yeah.
and
Okay,
that's-
let's, sir, are you willing to build, is it a 6-foot wall you're asking for?
Yeah.
Yes.
So are you willing to build a 6-foot wall on Waverly and the portion of Shaw that abuts the residential area?
6 foot fence.
I'm sorry, what?
We're asking for a masonry wall.
I can't do a wall for all this piece, it's like I never see a
Well,
wall in the
for
whole
basically
area.
this portion right here.
Look,
Yeah, I know
So
what you're
here
talking about.
and here.
But I never see a wall in the whole entire area. It's like, there is no wall whatsoever.
There's not an auto repair shop in the area.
It is. Right next to me is our repair shop. Right next to me, like wall to wall.
Right
It's
here?
Right, go to the left.
Here?
Yeah, it's right there. It calls RV. You can put it for the map.
Does it
And
abut Waverly?
no, it's in the 54, and the back
Right,
of
but
it
that's
is.
up on 54, that's farther away.
But this is not in Waverly. This is in 54. If I close.
But the buffer they're
Waverly-
asking for is on the buffer to Waverly. That other site you're talking about doesn't even
The
abut Waverly.
back, the back of it is in Waverly. It's a piece of it.
No, it
This
doesn't.
is the special exception thing, come back and do that. That way we can kind of,
There's another residential lot behind that shop that abuts Waverly.
Mhm.
So it doesn't directly abut Waverly, that shop.
If he's not in agreement for a wall, you can't, under this particular approval, you
right, you
cannot
can't
make,
do
you
it.
cannot
That's
make
why
him
I'm
do a wall.
suggesting maybe we ought to go drop back and go take the alternative motion might be a better approach. I don't know.
if we do that, then that doesn't really change your options. It just means you're gonna have to build a wall. So,
I'll go with the wall. 6-foot wall.
okay, just in that section we're talking about, not the whole thing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to
Yeah,
be the
yeah,
whole
this
property.
section on Waverly, yes.
Waverly and then
And, yeah.
from Waverly, up short to where your entrance
And
is.
here.
Yeah, but if I'm gonna do wall here, I'm gonna do wall all the way.
No,
Yeah.
just to your entrance.
Yeah, just to the, yeah.
That's all
Just-
you're
just
required.
the
Well, they
portion.
stop you
If
from
you wanna
building
do
a
it
wall,
more,
we just
then,
want
yeah.
that to be the
This,
minimum.
this
amount, right?
corner to be a wall, okay?
Okay,
Okay,
so
next.
From the
the
residential.
last thing we didn't really address is the existing fence that's on the adjacent C2 parcel. Do you want him to keep it up, or are you okay with it, just leaving, addressing it?
You mean
I don't
that,
think
the
we need
narrow
this.
piece?
Which fence you talking
You
about?
talking about here?
Yes.
Yes, currently these things don't address what happens on, in terms of buffering. The only reason I bring it up is because arguably if there's a resident sort of catty corner to the site, that fence may be blocking their view and providing some noise, some level of noise abatement.
So, and I hear you, and I'm sympathetic to it. But the one thing I'm thinking about is if he owns it and he were to unify title to all of this property, and like I said, I don't see any stormwater on his concept plan, and I can see where that becomes the logical place for a stormwater pond in the future.
Well, to be clear, I wasn't talking about the fence between the repair shop.
You're talking about on
I'm
Waverly?
talking about on Waverly.
Yeah, along
Talking
this,
about that
this,
fence.
this
Oh.
border right here.
Technically, there's
This
nothing in
section.
here that prohibits him from removing that fence.
So that's the one problem with all this stuff being under separate ownership.
So, William Devine, Planning Development. I will say that we did have a meeting to revise and discuss deed restrictions. We did discuss the applicant to revise his application if he wanted to bring in all of those parcels, but that would have caused a delay. He didn't want to delay it anymore. So I don't know if you want to ask if he wants to revise and bring everything in together and
Well, I mean, I
rezone
think you
everything to
could agree in a
C2.
deed restriction,
Yeah.
so you could agree in a deed restriction for this parcel to keep up the fence on the adjacent parcel. I don't know that he necessarily has to bring it in for the zoning purposes.
But then it means we're recording a deed restriction on 2 properties?
Well, it's basically an obligation to, it's sort of an off-site obligation of this site.
David, does it create any problems that, I mean, what if he sells that property and it doesn't have any other access other than off of Waverly?
Well, he's gonna have to come back if he wants to do it.
If we require a fence to be put there?
I mean, yes, he could, to the chair's point, he could come back and have the deed restriction modified, but, well, it's up to the planning commission. I mean, you all were pretty adamant about this site not having access to Waverly either indirectly or directly.
Right.
So.
I think that's where we ought to keep it.
So.
No, I know.
So, if you say that that piece can access Waverly,
So just tell me from a legal, if we ask him to voluntarily agree to leave the fence along Waverly on the other parcel, does he have to record a deed restriction against that parcel as well?
I think we would reference the parcel ID in this deed restriction.
But
So
he's,
in other words, this deed restriction would encumber both
Yes,
parcels?
so-
Okay, that's the question.
but in the property record for that, he's not listed as the owner.
Oh, he's
It's
not.
It's a Sam Gergis.
Well, then that is a problem.
That's his relative. It's his relative.
Yeah, I mean, his parcel is kind of the backwards L, but the property next to it is Sam Gergis based on what I'm seeing on the mapper.
Yes, correct.
That's
So
your
what, I mean, what is
brother.
your intent?
Is that your brother, you said?
Sam is my brother, yeah.
He's your brother, okay.
So what are you and your brother going to do with that parcel, and do you intend to keep the fence up?
Yeah, I don't, it's like the fence, I can keep the fence up. I don't have to take it down.
So any use of that parcel that you're going to make would be through the repair shop parcel?
Yes.
You're not gonna try to access from that, I understand your residential one's different, okay?
Yes.
But for your commercial piece, you have no intention of ever accessing Waverly.
No, I don't have to. I don't use Waverly. It's like, that's what I'm trying to explain. Since I've been in that area for 8 years, I just shot Waverly. I used to use it first, and then the tow truck make a lot of noise, and the tow truck is heavy, the road is narrow. I stopped doing it. I used the 54. And then after I have all this problem with traffic, now I use shot. Because like I said, I bought these parcels like year after year. So I didn't buy all.
Let me ask you the question another way, okay? If you have to put up a wall on Waverly for this piece, for the piece next door, would you just leave the fence up, or would you put a wall there? What would you do? I mean, I'm asking for your opinion.
I leave the fence up.
You would just leave the fence as
I
is?
leave the fence. I'm not gonna touch Waverly. I don't have any business with Waverly. I don't need to do. I don't need to go there.
So you would agree in the deed restriction that you would leave up the fence along that parcel?
Yes.
Your brother's parcel?
Yes.
Could we get your brother to sign the deed restriction too?
Eventually, I'm gonna put that, but you can't just combine these because that's a different subject, right? We're talking about that.
I
one
understand, but
subject.
I have a legal problem with you committing to something on behalf of your brother. So would you think your brother would be willing to also sign the deed restriction?
Agreeing to leave the fence there.
To leave up the fence along that piece?
It's mine. I'm moving the title like during
Okay,
this
well, I'm
time.
saying,
After
you
I
think you
move
can
it, I
get the
can sign.
owner of that parcel, whoever it is?
He can.
Okay.
Yes, he can. He got no problem. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he can because it's mine. It's like under his name, but I never got time to just move it.
Okay,
Like,
so-
he doesn't live in Florida. He's in
Okay,
Alabama.
you're willing to leave that fence up on that parcel?
Of course.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
It's a pretty good list.
So I think you're gonna need to give, I mean, if that's, I don't know, did somebody make that as a motion?
That list of.
What about no yellow cars or something like that?
Is it okay? Is it okay if we clarify the voluntarily agreed upon deed restrictions, please? And I can clarify them and you tell me if
Go ahead.
I'm correct.
Denise, you probably took better
For-
notes than anybody else.
First one, at the time of preliminary site plan submittal approval, the owner applicant shall prohibit direct or indirect access to Waverly Avenue.
Yes.
Second, at the time of preliminary site plan submittal approval, the owner applicant shall provide a 6-foot high wall along Waverly Avenue and along that portion of Shaw Avenue that abuts a residential district.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Doesn't look like we touched on C. Hours of operation shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and then we'll write something that they're not gonna be open on Sunday. Then there's gonna be a voluntarily agreed upon deed restriction that there shall be a 25-foot setback from the property line facing Waverly Avenue. Then we're also going to add, with proper language, that there shall be no overhead doors facing Waverly Avenue.
Correct.
Did I miss anything?
The requirement to maintain the fence on the adjacent part, whatever
Okay.
parcel ID that is, that
Okay.
adjacent parcel.
Shall maintain fence along along the western portion of the property that abuts parcel ID number, da-da-da.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the only thing we didn't really address is existing C, which, that's the Jamie Girardi question. Right now it says they have to provide a type B buffer with shade tree every 20 feet between, I'm assuming that would now say wall and Waverly, but is there, are we changing that in any way?
So
Or
then should it be a type C buffer to include the 6-foot-high masonry wall?
Well, the walls are dealt with another, you still, you have to change fence to wall. The question is, what landscaping do you want in addition to the wall? And then do you want the same landscaping on Shaw?
Well, the wall addresses part of my concern with the thickness and the density and the buffer. So if he's agreeing to do a wall, I can live with a type B buffer.
Okay, but do you want the type B buffer on Waverly and Shaw?
Yes.
The part right next to the
Anything
wall?
adjacent, just like the wall, anything adjacent to the residential.
Adjacent or opposite residential, yes.
Okay, so Denise, did you get how C has to be modified?
Yeah, so C is gonna continue to be a B buffer with a shade tree every 20 feet between the wall and Waverly Avenue and the wall and Shaw Avenue.
That sounds right.
Only Shaw where it's adjacent to the residential.
Okay, we'll use similar language along that portion of Shaw Avenue that abuts a residential district.
That's right.
So I'm gonna ask you all one last question, and hopefully we're done with this. Did you all want to deal with, I get that he may have a door in the back of the building for whatever safety reasons. If I was the neighbors though, if that door was left open all day long while they're doing repair work, the noise might be just as bad as if, yeah, I mean, should there be something addressing?
I hear you, and I would tell you I'm hesitant to do that. When we were here the last time, we talked to the code enforcement officer, and even though auto repair has to happen in an enclosed building, they don't go run around and make sure they have their doors shut while they do that. The other thing is, I don't want to create a situation where a neighbor is calling code enforcement every time someone opens up the back door and says he's in violation of his deed restrictions, or I guess if he's deed restrictions,
Well, I
you
mean,
have to sue to
you in
enforce
theory
those.
could say the back door will not be open more than 30 minutes at a time during the hours of
We want to
operation.
create a situation where someone's down there trying to time how
I don't
long.
know.
his
I'm not
door's
concerned
open.
with that.
It just-
If you're not concerned with it, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure that, because there was some discussion about it at the last meeting. I just want to make sure.
We're trying to provide protection, and I think the gentleman's been reasonable
More than gracious.
today, so.
The only thing though that we were saying that there's no bay doors facing Waverly. We didn't say anything about bay doors facing the residential portion of Shaw.
Well,
So,
I don't think
that's
it'd make
something-
much sense to do that if I was gonna put that, there's no room to pull
Well, it says it's
vehicles in
already
and out.
blocked building, so. Not that it couldn't be modified, but
Yeah, so I mean,
I don't think it's very practical.
but again, this is for not necessarily just for him, if anybody else buys the property in the future, so, and they want to move the
well,
building
but we're
around.
gonna have a wall there.
Yeah.
We are gonna have a wall, so.
Yeah.
I don't think we can protect against every possible, perceived offense that may or may happen. We have to do the best job we can here with what we've got. I feel like we've done it.
Liam, question for you. He won't be able to do auto body repair work, right? It's just general maintenance? There's no auto body?
No, that's not a permitted use.
Okay.
in C2.
Sorry.
Yes, it is. Sorry.
Oh, it is?
Yes. That is a permitted use in C2. And it's not one of the prohibited uses that's listed
What would be
in the deed restriction disallowed use.
It's a principal use.
objection of auto repair versus auto
Just
body?
painting in the legs,
Painting.
air discharges and like, I mean, that gets kind of, it's a lot different to do auto body repair than it is to just general maintenance on a.
Do they
on a
have
car.
to do that in like a contained
Yes,
booth or
they,
something?
if they're painting, they're gonna
Yeah,
have
it's
to.
in an
gonna have to be in a
enclosed,
spray
it's
booth,
completely
yeah.
enclosed.
So it'd have to be permitted, they'd have to have a separate air permit for that. So, I mean, it's, I guess it's just, it's a more intense use.
And that would be controlled by other agencies, right?
They'd have to get an air permit, yeah.
But
Yeah,
there's some
so it's not,
regulation.
nothing, it's nothing we need to condition here,
No.
Right.
or not condition, but.
It's one more of a question of
Ask for a deed
curiosity
restriction.
then. But it is a more intense use.
Okay. Do we cover everything?
So do you have, you're clarified on your list of deed restrictions?
So this will be the
If you were
crazy-
happy with everything I said and I took note on the corrections, yes, thank you so much.
Then I would move to approve item P12 with the voluntary deed restrictions that Ms. Hernandez will now read into this motion.
Well, she kind of already did. You want to make her read it again?
That she just read.
Well, to make sure that the applicant agrees
All right,
since
sure.
these are voluntary.
Okay. So
All right.
listen carefully to Ms. Hernandez, make sure.
Yes. So the applicant has voluntarily agreed to record a deed restriction to the property, providing the following use restrictions. At the time preliminary site plan submittal approval, the owner applicant shall prohibit direct or indirect access to Waverly Avenue. B, at the time of preliminary site plan submittal approval, the owner applicant shall provide a 6-foot-high wall along Waverly Avenue and along that portion of Shaw Avenue that abuts a residential district. C, at the time of preliminary site plan submittal approval, the owner applicant shall provide a type B buffer with a shade tree every 20 feet between the wall and Waverly Avenue and between the wall and Shaw Avenue along that portion of Shaw Avenue that abuts a non-residential district.
Residential.
I'm sorry, residential district, I apologize. D, the hours of operation shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday and shall not be open, the location shall not be open on Sunday. E, there shall be a 25-foot setback from the property line facing Waverly Avenue. E, the following uses are prohibited. This is your normal deed this will now be F. Car washes, gas stations, drive-through restaurants, self-storage facilities, freestanding recreational vehicle, boat storage, and C2 general commercial district conditional uses and special exception uses as listed in the Pasco County Land Development Code. And then G, there shall be no overhead doors facing Waverly Avenue. Then, okay, sorry, there's one additional one, which is the owner applicant shall maintain fencing along the western the western property line facing parcel ID number 15-26-21-0010-00200-0200.
It would be the southern property line, would it not?
That was the western property line,
Well, it's the west, the property to the west, but it's.
to the west of
southern-
his property.
Yeah, it's west of his property, but it's the southern property line on that.
The
parcel
southern
to the west.
portion of the western property line.
So Denise, on
And
that-
then the live local.
The southern property line
yeah,
of the
southern
parcel
What
to
do you
his
think, the
west.
north right-of-way line of Waverly Avenue? Or,
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll
and on
make
the
it,
last one, Denise, I think it should say existing or better fencing. Like, I don't,
okay,
if he wants to put a better fence up, I don't
Yes,
want
okay.
to
Continue the wall
stop
or
him
whatever, yeah.
from doing that.
okay, thank you. And then your live local regular deed restriction.
So you're all good with that?
Yes, I agree.
Okay,
All right, I'll second
I'm
the
gonna try
motion.
to type this for you.
okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
So I would like to remind Mr. Moody of this day next time he says he doesn't like voluntarily agreed to deed.
Yeah,
I was trying to be courteous to the chairman, I would have gone with the special exception we conditioned it.
you are, that's nice of you.
And thank you to the applicant for being a good neighbor. We appreciate it.
You changed
Yeah.
the hours, right?
Yeah, she did. She handled the hour.
Yeah. So, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess, brief recess,
Thank you.
okay?
It's like 2 months and
You're done, huh?
you can't live without the
You can't take the
so
poisons out of you.
So it causes you to shut down pretty quickly. If you're younger,
He's open statute.
I think that you can do really good.
I'm like, what, you gonna be on Saturday? Or
They can even do a traffic light.
Right after
Right out
the wrong
there.
direction.
Out the time table.
Crazy.
That's the only thing good about the fall time change. You get an extra hour of sleep during the day.
But I'll tell you what, I'll give up that hour for an extra hour. Anyways, I hate when it gets dark so early.
Well, our state voted to come off of it, but it has to be approved by Congress.
Sleep.
They voted a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago.
You know, it wasn't quite that peaceful, but I mean, but towards the end,
But
she
Congress has to approve it. That's
once she said, I'm done, no more treatment. They put you in
There's a
hospital.
couple other states. Hawaii, I think.
I thought there was that probably went on the line.
Notre Dame?
Oh, then maybe that's.
Oh, yeah, that's not so bad.
Except that friends of
Yeah, that sounds right.
Because
And then there's also either Arizona or Hawaii. I think it's Arizona. And then Hawaii.
What about your father? Is he still alive?
So you were done this year, you're getting out? Get it done, move right on.
My classes
Oh, there you go.
Alright, take that mess back.
Basically never recovered. Eventually, they had him on life support for a while.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
By that point,
Yeah, the whole thing with the defense, that infuriates me. The government, you know, that's what's wrong with, that stuff we gotta fix.
It's a hard thing to leave your parents.
Woman, she's been
Yeah,
through.
my mother-in-law lost her when she was 40. She never
She's
saw
got
a
40
day in her
pages
life.
in
Or
there.
anything.
yeah,
You know, she died of lung cancer.
yeah,
It's crazy.
That's the reason why I'm being.
40 years old. At the time, I didn't think that was young.
It was $1,000 variance.
Now I look
No,
back.
very
I had no idea
Yeah.
there was $1,000 fee to get a variance. And luckily, the DSCC.
All right, I guess we're
Yeah,
going
it was
to
that plus
one more
the.
item.
Okay. Okay, we call meeting to order. All right, Denise.
Mr. Chair, the following item is item PC9. I believe Nectarios Pitos will be presenting that item, or perhaps Amir Jamali or a combination thereof.
Okay.
Good afternoon. This is Amir Jamali with Planning and Development Department. This item is a land development code amendment, section 907.1, parking requirements. As you might remember, this item was heard by Planning Commission in October, and it got continued to an uncertain date. The original proposal was to changing the parking requirement for non-residential uses from minimum settings to maximum. And I believe the main concern with planning commissioners was that this will allow the developments with zero parking or non-sufficient parking spaces. And we also met with planning commissioners during November individually to discuss their concerns in more details. And today we are here with a new proposal, and Ms. Catherine Hartley with Benish, Countess Consultant, is here for presentation of the new proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see you all again.
Yeah.
I'm Catherine Hartley. I'm a senior project manager with Benish. I'm here to answer any questions, but I do have some corrections that I need to read into the record that are in the table.
Okay.
If you'll indulge me for just a moment. On page 10, in the minimum and maximum table for model home, there should be a 2-space minimum under the minimum on-site requirement. 2-space minimum, and then 4 spaces is the maximum. On page 11, I'm recommending that boarding house be stricken in its entirely from the table. You don't have a definition for it, and traditionally boarding houses have typically been a single-family home that the rooms are rented out. Think like the Golden Girls kind of situation. And that is covered under the single-family minimums, not maximums, in the table above this one. So I think you're covered there. On page 13, under home improvement, stores, lumber yards, and nurseries. Your table in Municode did not have a minimum there at all, and this just kind of got missed in all the drafts. So in looking at the ITE 5th edition code for this, I'm recommending that there be a 2 space per 1,000 minimum and a 4 space per 1,000 maximum. And then also on this page, for self-storage facilities, in order to be consistent with section 1105, the additional standards, there needs to be a 5 space minimum. And then we can set the maximum at 1 per 2 units, storage units.
Sorry, which one was this?
That is self-storage facilities, same page, 13.
Okay, and I apologize because I get a little confused. The home improvement stores and lumber yard.
Yes, sir.
Is it that you're just reading the table wrong? Because right underneath it, it talks about them being, whether they're less than or greater than.
Oh, you're right. I was
20,000
just
square
reading
feet.
the printed version, and I was wondering why that was
Shouldn't be a
blank.
borderline.
Okay, you are right. I had a panic when I was going through the print version before I got up here. Okay, scratch that. Under self-storage, back to that. So to be consistent with section 1105, 5 spaces have to be the minimum of 5 spaces.
Do you need to fix that language so it says per unit? Because it
Per
just says
unit.
1 space and 5 spaces. It doesn't say per what.
Per unit.
No, 5 spaces total.
Yeah.
For the maximum,
Yeah.
1 space for the maximum, per unit for the
1 space
maximum.
for 2 units for the max.
So it's
Yes,
5
but what I'm saying
spaces-
is it didn't have the per unit part in there.
5 spaces minimum
5 spaces
Max.
per minimum,
and 1 space per unit maximum?
maximum, correct, yes.
No, it doesn't make
1
sense.
per unit or 1
I
per 2
thought it was
units?
every 2.
Sorry, I'm not reading my
1
chicken
per
scratch.
2
1
units.
space per 2 units, yes.
Minimum.
Minimum, maximum. 1 space per
Maximum.
2 unit, maximum. 5 spaces total minimum.
5 spaces total. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
that makes it consistent with the additional standards in section 1105. And then the same goes for the freestanding recreational vehicle boat storage. 5 spaces is the absolute minimum for section 1105. And then you can also do for this one, a 1 space per 5 spaces. Because if it's just storage, you don't need a whole lot of parking. You just go
Yeah, 1.
pull your
Okay,
boat
so-
in, leave it, and go.
Just devil's advocate here, and I don't want
Sure,
to
go
hijack
ahead.
your, but for a freestanding boat and RV storage lot, which is a fence around
Yeah.
open parking, they've got to have 5 dedicated, not rented parking spaces for
That
what?
is how section 1105 reads, yes, sir. So if that's too many, you could also process a concurrent or do a subsequent amendment to that section of the code if you felt that was
Are
necessary.
we sure? 'Cause
I
just
don't
got one
think- yeah, I don't
permitted,
think
and I got it
1105
permitted
reads
with
that way.
1 space and a
Right.
handicap space. Can we check that?
Yeah, hold on, I've got it open actually on my computer. Did you process an amendment to that recently? Maybe it's not codified yet online?
That's section, which is 1105 G, freestanding recreational vehicle boat storage. Section 6 says 1 parking space is required.
That's what I thought. Yeah, just 1.
Self-storage.
Which is under the freestanding, which is a separate section.
Oh, okay, I understand. I was looking at maybe the wrong section. Okay, so it's 1 space. I was right doing it myself.
And that's 1105.G.6.
And then the max is 1 space per 5 storage spaces.
Right. I think that was the last little thing I caught. Okay. Yes.
There was one typo in the agenda memo. Page 303, second bullet. for parking requirements for public schools. That should be section 453.10.2.8. It's correct in the references in the ordinance. But the agenda memo was,
On the agenda,
yeah,
page 3.
page 3 of the agenda memo.
Also, one other observation on the agenda memo is that there's reference to it in the definitions to gas stations versus fuel stations. That's in the agenda memo, it refers to them as gas stations, but I think the correct term is fuel.
Fuel, right, the
Stations.
definition was for fuel
Right.
station. And then I have a question about the agenda memo. There's a section in here that says 9071E allows all multifamily and non-residential may provide up to 50% of parking spaces as compact parking. I didn't find that. I found where it said they could have 25% compact parking. And then there's another one that says it adds a setback of at least 5 feet from the front facade of the structure for attached garages and townhouses. I didn't find that.
Those were in the original ordinance that you heard last fall, and they were stricken from this version. So
Okay.
just the memo, I think, needs to be.
We changed it to 25, didn't we, here? 25%,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, I think we have some.
Yeah.
Yeah, we said 50 was too much.
We went back to your original ratio that was already in the code.
I think that's what the minutes that we just approved at the beginning of this meeting said.
Right.
Just so happens to be
Good
those
timing.
minutes, yeah.
That's right.
Do you have any
Because
questions?
I do have a couple of questions, just, again, I know a lot of work's gone into this, and I think the addition of the minimums is a good addition to the ordinance to prohibit some of the bad guys out there. But on the ordinance, and I'm going off the red line, so maybe the pages might not line up, but I'm on page 3 under section 3 where it talks about minimum parking. It talks about parallel parking spaces, stall width of 9 feet. And then if you go back to the single family, it allows 8-foot wide parallel spaces. Is that on purpose?
Are you talking about under number 4 where it says of which 8 feet must be stabilized?
No, if you have the parking, the stall length and aisle width standards, that's on page 3.
Yep.
And then if you go back to the actual table where it calls for the single-family parking requirements, under the notes additional standards, at the end there, it says the minimum width of on-street spaces is 8 feet and shall not be broader. So I guess.
Oh, thank you for
maybe
catching
that's
that.
just the width of the standard spaces, that's not parallel spaces? I was, it may be right, I just wanted clarification, that's all.
On-street spaces 8 feet.
I think of on-street parking in single-family as parallel spaces or on,
I've got it.
So that'd be on page 8,
yeah, page 8, I'm sorry.
under notes additional standards.
Okay, that's my fault. I'll correct that.
This is, so it's supposed to be
So-
9.
So there was some discussion about a residential area, just that you have a mountable curb area that could be somewhat included in that space to try and reduce the overall width of pavement and impact. So we could leave it at 8 and still park functionally, or we can move to 9 to have it consistent. We can do either one, whatever you guys would like to do.
Or if we're gonna allow the mountable curb to be in that width, that's fine. Do we need to just add something to the language there? I don't really see the need to add the additional foot of pavement width. I mean, if you're gonna allow the
Yeah, we can
mountable curb.
tweak it either way, whichever you guys prefer.
That makes sense.
So while we're on the topic of width and length, I do remember making a comment last time this came about electric vehicle infrastructure, and is there a way that they can get some automatic relief from the minimum length and widths? Is that possible? I don't see that in here.
The EV standard that I added was that EV spaces would not be counted towards the minimum or the maximum. So I may have misunderstood what you were asking.
Well, it was really
for.
both things. Just part of it. I agree that it shouldn't count towards
Yeah.
minimums or maximums, but I think it's also an issue of length and width.
Okay.
Because I can see a possibility where somebody puts in the electric charging infrastructure and now they've got potentially not meeting the required widths or lengths, because I don't want somebody to have to get an alt standard to put in from width or length either, just to put in electric charging infrastructure.
Understood.
Would that be within
Okay.
some reason? I mean, one could make a 5-foot wide EV charger.
Well, yeah, I don't care if there's some maximum amount of deviation allowed, I guess, I mean, but, it seems like there should be some automatic relief to allow for. I don't know what the bare minimum is you need, but.
So I think the relief would probably come from something else, if it's up against a buffer or something. Because the size of the car is gonna be the same, whether it's an electric vehicle or a gas vehicle. So the space technically needs to have that same minimum. And then the equipment would likely be outside of the physical space itself.
So it's really a landscaping
Yeah, it might be
buffer issue?
landscaping or a sidewalk.
I remember we did
ADA
do
traffic
something,
travel.
we did add language in the landscape upstate the landscape code that maybe it covers it.
Yeah, I think it would be, and again, even if it didn't, we do have the means to discuss and make some decisions based on that.
And then I didn't see, maybe I just don't see your EV language. Where is the EV language? Because what page is it?
Faster for me to search the PDF than to dig through the pages.
Yeah, I was looking at the redlining and I didn't see it, but again, I may have missed it somehow.
I only saw something that it just didn't count towards the minimum.
Well, I don't even see that language. Where's that?
That was in the text of the
I believe you, I just couldn't find it.
It may not have, we had a last minute draft that was going back and forth between me and the staff, and it might have accidentally, might not have made it in the hearing.
What are we looking for, David?
The language that
The language that says
allows
that
that the EV parking doesn't count against either the minimum or
Thank you.
the maximum. I know it's there because I read it.
Oh, maybe not my red line.
So I'm not seeing it on that page, Brad, unless it's in the,
Yeah, that's not the right one, not the right.
Like at the beginning, not in the table.
We can make sure that.
I think
is
it
back
got
in there if
clipped
it
from the
accidentally got
final
clipped
one that
out.
was going, yeah, back and forth at the last minute.
okay, well, let's assume it goes back in there. Well, actually, that wasn't my question, but
Go ahead with your
I was
question.
gonna start by trying to find that language to see, to address a different issue, but, the other question I have for you was, and I think I may have brought this up at the last meeting, and I realize I don't see many of them in Florida, but out west, I see a lot of solar carports. And I'd wanna make sure that if somebody wants to put a solar carport in, it's not counted towards their,
So wasn't
if it
there,
causes them to go below the minimum, it's not gonna be a problem.
there was a section in here that allowed that parking could be within garages or carports for single family, so.
Well, it's a different
Like,
issue.
for
So
putting up
so
solar
typically when you see these out west, they're putting them in after the fact. Like, they're not building them with the original parking area. They're afterwards saying, hey, I want to put a solar carport in, and they may lose some spaces when they do that.
To accommodate the width of the structure.
Right, the supports, and
everything.
so,
Yes.
I don't want, if somebody, that seems to be a good thing if somebody's putting in a solar carport. I would hate to see them get penalized on a minimum solely for putting that in.
And that would also be one of the things that we can address.
So that's what I was gonna say, if we were gonna already say the EV spaces didn't count towards minimums, if you said the footers with solar carports don't, I mean, something similar, I don't wanna come up with the language here, but again, since I'm seeing them a lot out west, I think it's just a matter of time before we start seeing them in Florida too, I think, because they make sense, they provide shade and solar energy, and so wouldn't wanna see somebody penalized if they wanted to do that.
Yeah, we can literally add solar carports to that sentence.
Okay, that's what I was gonna try to do, but I couldn't find the
Yeah,
sentence.
no, it's totally fine. I can read it from that.
It's okay, I don't wanna delay this whole proceeding while you try to find it, just, as long as you get those two concepts in the next draft, I'm good.
Okay.
So I don't wanna make you delay everything here. I'm sure others have comments, so I'll let everybody else.
Let it fly.
I just have a couple more real quick, and I think these are, if you go page 19 under miniature golf, I think there's a typo in the maximum. Maybe that's supposed to be 3 spaces per hole.
Spaces per hole, yep. Got it.
And then, just for clarification, under the bicycle parking requirements,
Yes.
I had to read this carefully because I guess the note at the top, 1 space is 2 bikes.
Accommodates
Right,
2 bicycles.
okay.
Yes.
So if we say we have a 10 bike rack,
It
I
accommodates
get it,
20.
I got you. You start talking about, and I know all codes can't be written to catch everything, but when you see places like churches, which I'm assuming is gonna fall under an assembly category, do other places have like maximums? And I'll use my example. I recently did a church retrofit in a shopping center, and they had 1,300 seats in their church, okay? if I run the numbers per this code, they've got to provide 52 bike spaces.
So we
I'm
should
personally not
establish a
sure I ever
maximum.
saw one bike at a church,
Yeah.
but 52 just seems like it starts to get excessive when you start talking about bigger uses like that, so I don't know if there's a maximum that can be put in there.
We can.
And then the other question on bicycle parking under, is if I think about boat RV storage, self-storage, some of those users, I think the way the categories are written, if I look back to the way the parking is, like boat and RV storage, self-storage, those all fall under commercial office. So if I use this table, if I had a 100,000 square foot self-storage place, building, user, they would be required to provide 10 bicycle parking spaces, is that right?
Because you'll bring all your stuff that you're gonna store on your bicycle.
Again, I know those are probably extreme cases, and we probably fall back to, you know, all of a sudden provide justification, and I think there's relief language earlier in the ordinance, but I just wanted to make sure I was interpreting or reading this right.
So, yeah, I think Jamie's concern is in his example that 50 bike
For-
spaces would be required.
Yeah, for assembly for a church.
And that's probably excessive, so.
So if your attendance is 1,300 people, what's 2% of 1,300?
26.
26?
So it's 26, it's still high.
Numbers to this now.
We should make it up to, say, the first 10 or 20,000 square feet or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, just so it doesn't get so big.
Right.
And again, you start talking about assembly recreation, I mean, you could be talking big users. So
Yeah.
in that case, you end up with these huge bike requirements. I mean, I think that the example I gave, we recently did one, and I think under the current code even, we're required to put like 27 bicycle parking
Yeah.
spaces, and even that seemed excessive, but that's what the code said, so that's what we had to do.
And again, we have the ability to deviate from that.
Right.
Through the less formal process that we set up. So.
Right.
We could do that.
But if we're addressing it now, we might as well.
It might be right for a water park, it might not be right for a
Yeah,
church. So
sure.
We can do that on each.
Yeah, that's why I said if there's a maximum that can be put there or
Yeah.
something like that, I think that was all I had.
That's it. John? Chris?
See what John says.
We're all waiting for John to make comments.
Okay.
The problem child.
Yeah. Because I live in the real world. Where we drive cars in our suburban county.
I did use the suburban ITE codes.
Good.
Commissioner.
So let's talk about those first.
Would you like the codes that I used?
Well, no, wait. The memo says that the minimums are per the ITE 5th generation parking manual. So I went and got a copy. And I brought a few examples with me. So here's a fast food restaurant with drive-through window from the 5th edition. I got them.
These are the ones that I used.
Well, okay, but this, look, 5th edition, I got the 5th edition, I'm not lying. So let's go to fast food restaurant with drive-through window. I think it says 1 space per 1,000 square feet gross floor area. Everybody know what the gross floor area of a McDonald's is? I got their real estate stuff today too. It's 4,500 square feet. So
I was going to say 5,000, so. I was
5 spaces. So the ITE minimum for general urban suburban on a weekday is 8.66. That's not 1. On a Friday, it's 12.41. On a Saturday, it's 9.818. And on a Sunday, it's 10.47. So it's not 1 per 1,000 square feet. I'm trying to think, how many people would work in a McDonald's?
Depends how busy they are.
Probably think it's more than maybe 4. So where's the customer part?
Commissioner, I looked at the ranges. not just the average, because for each
Okay,
use, they
so I'm looking at
vary.
the range. The range starts at 3.
Yep,
Then on Friday, it goes, the bottom end is 6.58. And the bottom end on Saturday's 2.96. And the bottom end on Sunday's 9.14. So these not even in the range. Then we get the high turnover sit-down restaurant. That's the restaurant without a drive-through window. Here, 1 space per 1,000 square feet. Anybody want to know what the area of an Outback Steakhouse is? Longhorn Steakhouse. About 5,000 square feet. So you'd need 5 parking spaces.
And that counts kitchen and everything, right?
Yeah,
That's-
yeah.
that's
not
a
just
space
customary.
for the lettuce and the produce and the meat.
Yeah,
You know?
I understand, but this says per GFA, that's gross
Yep.
floor area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So according to ITE, on a weekday, it's 9.44. On a Friday, it's 11.33. Surprise, it's higher on the weekend. And on a Saturday, it's 12.28. That's usually when I go out to eat. And on a Sunday, it's 11.25. So that's not anywhere near 1.
Keep in mind, folks, keep in mind.
Hold on, I'm not done. So I went to the website for Longhorn Steakhouse to look at what their criteria is for real estate development. Sorry, what did I do with it? It's buried in all my stuff down here. So Longhorn, their typical building square footage is 5,710 square feet. They have 184 seats. So this would require 5 spaces for 184 seats. That's all you have to have. And you know how many parking spaces they ask for in their lease? 127. McDonald's didn't say how many they ask for, but they do provide a prototype, and I don't know, you want to count them? It looks like more than 5 to me.
Trust you, yes.
Yeah, that's way more than 5. I'll pass that down. Here's Wendy's. They need at least 20 spaces, and they only have a 2,000 square foot restaurant.
Commissioner, we can actually go through this all day long with specific examples like that. The intent was to create the range that the typical
But we
market
haven't
will
been
drive.
in the range.
So the market is driving the range. It's not driving, the market's not saying do 5 spaces. The market's saying something else.
I understand that, but the problem that we talked about before, and trust me, I'm not worried about McDonald's coming in here and building a restaurant with 5 spaces. They're not that stupid. But I have clients that are that stupid, that will do that. And you know, if we go back to the top of this ordinance, it talks about change of use. So today over on the corner of Happy Hill Road and 52, we recommended approval of changing the land use on what's an existing duplex into an office. All right? So I don't know how many parking spaces are down there. Now we're going to turn it into an office, and under this ordinance, they wouldn't have to provide, and none of this minimums would even apply. So just because we're changing the use of a building, what if I took that house and changed it into a bar? In fact, Chuck, I'm thinking about Skinny's up on US 19. Okay? Anybody ever been to Skinny's on the weekend? Where are they parking? All over the right of way. Anybody ever been in the fishing shack in Arapika? Where do they park? All over the right of way. And that's the danger that we get by making the minimum so low. And I guess where I was a little disappointed when I read the ordinance, we came in, and as Amir alluded, we had meetings. I came in November, and I met with Amir, and I met with Catherine, and I met with Brad. And where you guys told me you were going was that you were going to try to establish minimums, and that the minimums would be 25% of the current minimums. But then I go through the chart, and I see some of these are even less than 10% of the current minimums. minimums. They're not 25%. I don't personally support 25%. I think that's way too low. But they're not. And I've got a whole bunch, we can do this all day, of examples where our memo says that the minimums are established by the ITE minimums. They're not close. You should look at hospital. Okay? The ITE is 4 spaces per bed. This is 1 space per 4 beds. Anybody ever been to Bayonet Point Hospital and tried to get a parking space?
Possible.
You can't. You gotta start in place. I just think this is a very dangerous precedent. And I don't think that this is what the commissioners have asked for. A couple of county commission meetings ago, I heard Commissioner Starr, I saw Mr. Petos get up during the public hearing sections and announce what public hearings they were gonna have, and on the continuance list was this ordinance, and Commissioner Starr, he asked him, what's the holdup? When are we gonna bring this? And he said, we were working with the planning commission to address some issues. So I heard that, and I reached out to Commissioner Starkey, and I told her, listen, I was quite vocally against this during the first planning commission hearing, so maybe you and I should talk and let me try to understand what it is you want. And what it is that they want is a pretty simple thing. Every time we do an MPUD request and they have multifamily in here, they routinely ask for an alt standard for 1.9 parking spaces per multifamily unit. And we have to routinely grant that alternative standard. They'd like that fixed in the code, so you don't have to keep asking for an alternative standard in the same thing. And the multifamily parking in this ordinance doesn't get anywhere near, they're basing it on bedrooms. Well, how does somebody at the MPUD stage even know what the mix of bedrooms is gonna be when we're at the zoning and land use stage or something? Even if I'm coming, sometimes we do site plans and we don't have exact building plan designs, right? We've got a footprint area,
Sure.
and we go get a site plan. We don't know what all the bedrooms are. How would we ever know that? So it just seems that's a simple thing to fix. The other thing that she was concerned about, and I agree with her about this, is we get, and maybe Mr. Gray can enlighten us a little bit since he's a commercial real estate broker. You build a brand new shopping center. And the one she sees is the one down there at the corner of Mitchell and 54 that has the Target in it. And then that thing was built brand new 20 years ago. Man, it was the place to go, right? Parking lot was full. Target's still there, but now a lot of the other junior anchor tenants have turned over and they're in their second and third and fourth generation of spaces. And we've all started shopping at Amazon. We order stuff at our house and we don't go out and use that center like we used to. So there's excess parking. And that excess parking could be used as an out parcel for a McDonald's or an Outback Steakhouse or whatever. And they're trying to find a way to facilitate that. And I'm not sure that establishing minimums that we know are going to cause parking problems, yeah, that might facilitate the creation of an out parcel. But it could also create problems for other uses. So it seems to me we should have a process by where there's an alternative standard that where we can do a parking study and look at a shopping center like that. Hey, I'm in my 5th generation of space. I'm thinking one near my neighborhood, which is at 52 and Little. And that shopping center that's at the southwest corner, it's being slowly revitalized, but it still has way in excess of parking that they'll ever use. And they ought to be able to come in and say, hey, I'm in my 5th generation of space. This is no longer the Winn-Dixie that this thing was with all of the local retail spaces, and we've only got 40% occupancy on average for the last 5 years. We should be able to reduce the parking requirement, sell some out pads out front, generate some extra tax revenue. That seems to me to be reasonable.
That exists
But
today.
if you, okay, so we come in here and now we're establishing maximums. And I'm Longhorn Steakhouse. I'm going to have to apply for an alt standard and do a parking study just to get the minimum parking I need. for my use. We're gonna create a situation where all of the national retailers and the national restaurateurs are gonna have to come in and try to justify their parking. And I frankly don't even understand why that should be an issue. It's their land. They have all the other code requirements they have to meet. All right, they have to provide the landscape, the interior landscaping, all the buffering around the perimeter. They have to provide all the stormwater facilities for that. Why should we care whether they want to build more than you think they need? And I asked the question when I met with Amir and Brad, Catherine. So I said, well, what prompted the maximums? And what I got told was, well, somebody come into planning and development, and they were proposing to build parking far in excess of the code minimums. And staff didn't feel like that was a good use of the land. But that's not the staff's job. The job is if they meet the code and they provide all the requirements of the code, then it's your job to give them the permit, not to decide whether you think it's a good use of the land or a poor use of the land. It's their land and their right to use that land under our zone. We don't have things that prohibit them from using that land. That's their choice to do. And they may decide that later in the future they don't need all that parking and they want to build another McDonald's or a Wendy's. But who are we to stop them?
That's why I was kind of opposed to the maximums originally, because that's something the market should drive. They're not going to build more parking than they need, right? Because they can use that land for other purposes to sell out out parcels.
Parking is easily cut out to create a new building in the future or another use. This isn't like we've built all kinds of underground infrastructure and subway tunnels and skyscrapers on top. You cut the asphalt out, you build a building pad, run some utilities over it, and voila. It's not that hard to convert.
It's a lot harder to go the other way.
So that's where I'm at. And I just don't, I don't think that, maybe there's some miscommunication, but I can tell you that with the commissioners I've discussed this with, and it's more than one, they're not looking to cap people's parking. They're looking to make sure that when we've got a shopping center that's second, third, fourth generation space, that we don't have to force those people to keep all that parking, that we can use this, adapt that, and reuse that for something that's more productive and generates tax revenue. And I agree with them on that. And I would personally support some reduction in the retail parking from what we have today, because I think we can all acknowledge I'm just as guilty of buying stuff from Amazon and Walmart online as anybody else is. In fact, I like them. So, and I know, and I'm a guy who did a lot of engineering for a lot of retail over my career, and I know that retail trends have changed. They've clearly changed, and we have a code that was set forth the minimum parking requirements for retail back in the 1990s. That was the glory days of shopping centers and power centers and freestanding drugstores on every corner. And boy, if you want to go look and see how many Walgreens my seal is on, there's a lot of them. Same with every Checkers drive-in restaurant in the Tampa Bay area. So I know a little something about drive-thrus when we get to that subject. But I just don't feel like this ordinance does what the commissioners are looking for. I think we're setting dangerously low minimums, and I don't feel like we have any right to tell anybody that they can't build more parking if that's what they feel
or they have to jump through hoops to do it.
Without having to jump through hoops to do it. So I think I've made my point. I'm not going to belabor it. I'll leave it to everybody else to discuss.
May I make one comment?
Sure.
This is a policy decision. No one's ever going to get parking counts right. ITE is used as the Bible, and probably erroneously, because it's based on observed places and a handful of things around the country dating back to the 1970s. And it says that in the book. Use this with caution, right? Because these are a handful of observances. It's not predicting a future, it's not looking at current trends. If you really think about it, why would we allow a restaurant that serves alcohol to have any parking for its customers? We want them to take a ride share, right? If we were really thinking about health, safety, welfare. This is a policy choice for you. It doesn't matter to me which way you go in, we just need the direction. You know, what I have said to other clients is not to have a minimum or a maximum. However, I understand your concerns about someone getting off and not providing any parking. I think Mr. Moody, you said that at one of the previous meetings. I understand that. So you can turn this around and just lower the minimums. You can do nothing, which is what I would recommend. Have no minimum or maximum. Let the market decide, because everybody's different. A national retailer is not the same as a local mom and pop shop. They're just not the same. It's up to you. It's literally a policy decision about the future of your county. What do you want to look like? Do you want more of the same? Or do you want something different? It's entirely up to you.
Well, we can agree some of the issues were caused back in the day when the minimums were too high for these retails, you know, or arguably they've become too high. But back when these buildings were built, they were required to provide X number of parking spots per square footage of retail space, and that created, you know, the minimum at that point might have been a little bit too high. So that might be the solution, is to reduce some of the minimums and eliminate maximums.
I think in retail, we can all agree people's retail shopping habits have changed, okay? We order a lot of stuff from online sales and have it delivered right to our house, and we probably don't need as many parking spaces in front of retail stores that we may have in the 90s. I don't think that's a problem. But when we go out to dinner, that ain't any different. Okay, and when we have a popular restaurant or a popular bar, we drive our cars there, and we park there.
Ever try to get parking at Bonefish on 54?
You know, I brought their criteria too. I think they required 125 or 127, and then they were very similar to Long.
Yep.
Longhorn.
Or Outback over there on Duck Slough as well.
Steakhouse and Outback, yes. We go out to eat. Those places are big parking generators. And you know, I understand the ITE may not be the Bible, but the memo says that the minimums are per the ITE, and the minimums I think I've demonstrated, and I can go on for a long time today if we want to do that, because I got the ITE manual with me.
I
don't think that's needed, John.
I don't think they're not the minimums. I'll just say they're not the minimums. And even the one she read into the correction earlier. She read into the correction for the lumber yards and home improvement and said, well, we need to use the minimum ITE at 2 spaces, and then right under, when I corrected her, it says 1 space. That's 50% of that parking. I was at a Walmart on this past Sunday. What I would tell you when I went to Walmart, and it was 1:30 in the afternoon when I went there, so this is about time church is let now. 75 to 80% of that parking lot was full. The farther you got away from the store and the farther out away from the store, those couple of rows were empty, but those ones in front of the store were generally filled from front of the store to back of the parking lot. So, no, they don't, Walmart doesn't need all that parking, and we could probably reduce some of that, but they sure used a good chunk of it.
Well, and you're not ordering Home Depot 2x4s online and having it shipped to your house.
That is correct. So that's correct.
So I have a couple comments I'd like to add there. I know you were discussing Longhorn and Bonefish and the parking situation there, and that their marketing requires them to actually have more spaces than what our maximum cap will be. That is not an issue with what we have here. Yes, it's over the maximum, but we have a very simple means built in here. It's not a formal alt-standard process. It's a very simple means for those types of places that can justify their need, like a restaurant, to be able to get there.
I understand that. I read it. And what I'm saying is every one of them that comes in here is going to have to provide that justification. We should have somebody that has to provide a justification, and there's probably a lot of good justifications to provide less than the minimum.
Correct.
But not somebody that wants to have a justification to build more than the minimum. It's their land.
And they're not
It's
gonna
not your
build
land,
more
it's
than
their
they need.
land.
And that's, I think, believe the policy decision that Catherine was talking about, is to what extent this code helps the county to be good stewards, to provide a framework for what people that come in that might abuse the system would, so they have to actually have a discussion about it and why it may or may not be a good idea. You may have a mom and pop that wants to pave their entire site, but they don't understand some of the implications of that and other things. So I think this sets a framework for that. We want to address things, and I think we did in this, as far as being able to deviate from the minimum, from the maximum, deviate for places doing redevelopment, to be able to assist in redevelopment. We have had a number of people that come in that want a change of use, that then invokes the new parking standards, and a business ends up not ever coming to that location because they can't do the parking standards. So this would address
And
those
so
types of
they should be
issues.
able to provide, if they can justify that they need less than then there should be a process for them to justify if they can do a parking study.
That
But to tell
exists
them,
today.
but to tell them, these parking minimums don't apply to you because it's a change of use, I could go I'm thinking about Little Road. So on Little Road, this is an interesting, it used to all be through Golden Acres, and now there's some houses that front Little Road, and of course, those are probably miserable places to live, fronting on Little Road. And I want to turn it into a bar. What's this code require me to park?
So
Nothing.
I would like to speak to that specifically, actually. That was going to be my second comment, is that creates a huge unintended consequence in that we have to park every single site for its highest and best use for the zoning. And that could be a ridiculous amount of parking.
Well, I know this. I go by Skinny's on Friday night. It ain't like they're
gotta
parked
quit
on
going
the
to
right of
Skinny's.
way. It ain't like they're parked on the right of way, a few cars in front of the place. They're parked on the right of way for a half a mile or to a mile to the north and a half a mile to the
And
south.
pedestrians walking in the turn lane on 19.
Yes.
Security.
Ever been to ukuleles over on 40?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
At least they have the alternative parking over there, so.
How would you like
Yes.
us to
These are
change this?
Just,
So what you're saying, I think, is the flavor of this is that we'd like to control the minimums, but not the maximums. Is that what you're saying, John?
yeah, I don't think we have any business controlling maximums so long as they meet all the other requirements of the land development code, right? Our code would require them to provide a certain amount of interior landscaping and green space, irrigation for all of that, stormwater management, treatment systems for all of that. Why should we care that they want to do that? And it's not like they're building something that can't be redeveloped, and it's a parking lot. You want to redevelop a parking lot, just scrape off the asphalt. It's not a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it's not big impact.
There's a Waffle House there, right?
Yeah.
On US 19, just north of Main Street. They scraped up the parking lot, built a
Yeah.
Waffle House.
Yeah.
Generally,
You know, they scraped up a gas station with the parking lot. But I think that's what you were saying, basically. It was a way to convert excess parking into an alternative use. Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think we're on the right track. I think it's just the number of, I think the minimum number is a question, right?
So, I'll throw this out there. Because the commissioner would like to be able to deal with the problem that she sees. At least when I met with Commissioner Stark, and I've spoken with Commissioner Mariano about this. If I were to make a proposal, we can talk about it. What I would propose is to leave the ordinance as is, but let's make the majority of the ordinance as is. But we'll make a couple tweaks. One, change the multifamily parking to 1.9 units or 1.9 spaces per unit so that they don't have to continually ask for an alt standard every time they come in here for an MPUD zoning. And David, when we discuss this, then I'll ask about Live Local, since they decided to preempt our parking in the Live Local too. That might not be a smart idea, what I'm proposing. And then the other tweak would be that we clearly indicate that in second and third or beyond first generation retail space, that you can come in with a parking study to justify a reduction in parking to allow additional development of out parcels and the like on the property so that we don't have an excess sea of parking. I might need some graphic language from you if that gets to the form of a motion, but I'm trying to figure out.
Any other reduction in minimums anywhere else in retail or your proposal?
Well, so I thought about that. So based on my experience of Walmart this past Sunday, I might think that a 20 or 25% reduction in retail parking might be appropriate. All that being said, that was me going to one Walmart on one Sunday. I'd like to hear what some of your experiences are about that before we just arbitrarily.
What it looks like during the holiday season.
The other thing I'll leave you with food for thought, I left this with Commissioner Stark, is if we want to reduce some minimums, reduce the minimums, let's reduce them a little bit at a time, because we can always reduce them more. But if we reduce them too much and we create a parking problem, we have no way to ever fix that problem. It's a permanent problem. We can always give them more reduction later.
So I think that we kind of have a little bit of a situation here. What I'm hearing is that some of the ideas of the Planning Commission that you're offering are really sticking with our standard code, which we've identified as bad. It's bad planning, flat out. So it's produced what the folks do not want to see on the ground out there. So moving forward, whatever recommendation you'll make here, with whatever changes you would like to make, we'll move forward with a split recommendation to the board with the planning and yours.
I mean, that's
and
the
they
staff's
can decide.
prerogative.
They can decide how they want to do that. I will state also that, you know, when you were mentioning the multifamily moving into 1.9, most of the multifamily right now is requesting 1.5 or 1.7. We're saying no, that's too low. So, but ITE,
The
as you see,
ITE is like 1.3.
1.1, I think. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's there. So the idea was to get rid of those kind of alt standard processes. If we stick with the minimums, we're going to need to have an alt standard process still, whether it's an alt standard from 2.25 or an alt standard from 1.9. There's going to be an alt standard.
Yeah, Brad, I think there's just, and I think what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of unintended consequences out of what's being proposed here on both sides. You're going to have sites that have nothing but, I mean, does the board, and it's, at the end of the day, it's a decision for the board to make. Do they want sites where literally you have parking up and down the side of the street and where people just don't provide any parking? And then you've got, I think you guys are creating, I know we're creating a code and modifying a code so you don't have all these alternative standards come in to request to lower parking, but I think you're gonna get a bunch of alternative standards on the other side where a ton of users, probably more than not, that want to exceed the maximums.
And there is no alternative standard for that.
Well, it's not an alternative standard, but
it's
still,
a
again,
process
it still creates a process. And again, I still, and I know I've mentioned this before to you directly, I still have concerns with that because I guess there's always, under this code, what is that process? I know it's for you to decide or somebody in the department, the reviewer, to decide, but what's the appeal process? Because if that guy decides, whoever, and it might not be you, 10 years down the road, the way the code's written, we don't want to give it to you, we don't think it's right. I mean, so all of a sudden you're essentially driving all those users out of Pasco County. I mean, the Longhorns, the Outbacks, any of those people that are going to want to exceed the maximum requirements. I mean, any medical. I mean, I don't know. I haven't talked to a doctor that wants to move into parking a space with parking less than 6 per 1,000, but that's not allowed under the current code. They have to come and ask permission.
And just to provide another example here, our current code says that any parking you provide above 110% needs to be pervious. And we see these places that are coming in.
If it's more than 100 spaces.
Right. How much pervious parking are you seeing in these places you're talking about? These places that are using these long.
In my personal opinion, and I'm speaking as an engineer, and I've got sites, one under construction right now that uses pervious pavement. And I said this before on the record, I'm gonna say this before, and it even came up in the discussion today. We talked about the guy in his auto repair shop parking on gravel, and what happens? Well,
Fluids leaking.
I'm gonna tell you right now, because I've been up, if you go to the shopping center up at Spring Hill Drive in US 19, they got a lot of pervious concrete pavement in there, and that's where I became enlightened about pervious pavement, is when I pulled onto a pervious parking space, and when I came out of the store, the car that was next to me was gone, and their car had been leaking oil. Well, where'd all that oil go? Went right through that pervious pavement, right into the ground. Is that what we want? So yeah, I understand it provides some stormwater benefits, but there's a whole nother side of pervious pavement that they don't tell you about, and that's one of them. So, and I'm not here to try to ban pervious pavement. That's not our discussion today. I don't even think requiring a certain amount of pervious pavement is a smart idea in our code either. I can tell you I did a lot of work for, now it's Advanced Auto Parts, but it was Discount Auto Parts in the day. If you go to O'Reilly and Discount Auto Parts, you will never see an asphalt parking lot. Do you know why?
Yeah,
Because everybody's car leaks oil. That's why they're going there. They're going there to buy the oil, and they constantly have to repair the pavement because of all the oil that's dripped on there. That's why they all use concrete pavement.
Brad, you mentioned, so you're talking about the current code, and you said it's kind of a mess, and that's why we're seeing all the problems we're seeing. So we know one of the problems was excessive retail parking. What other problems?
Excessive everything parking, really. If you look in the code, pretty much our code minimum parking currently is the maximum parking in ITE.
Okay.
So we're going way beyond it. What you see on the ground today is the history of that. That's what's out there. That's what it created.
So maybe that's the way we solve this whole thing, is just reduce the minimums that we have.
That is an option.
We leave them there for the bad actors, but we reduce them from where we have.
I had suggested the last time that we use the minimums per ITE, and that's what the memo says the minimums are based on, but that's not what they're based on, because I checked them.
Let me clarify that.
I will say this, that the ITE does not have every category of possible parking. They've done what they've studied over the years, and there's always going to be something that's on the outside. But back to Jamie's point about the alt standard, I know you're saying it's not an alt standard, but the language in this ordinance does not set forth what the criteria for approval is to exceed. It says you can submit this. So then who's the judge? Who's the jury?
The county
Do they get
administrator
to come back to
designate.
the planning commission if you say no?
The county administrator designate can make a decision, and any decision that is made can be appealed based on that. So, I mean, we have means to handle those situations. And to go back to your comment about not matching the ITE and our land use codes and other things, our uses, there's a lot of difference there. We ultimately have to implement this in the end. When somebody comes in and asks for something and it's a label different than something that's in the ITE, where we're trying to make this a simplified process for review as well, to try and find that range, and if you're within that range, then you're good. So the ITE codes were used as a basis, but they were not taking exactly as a quoted element.
I'm not personally seeing where they're even close, but.
The only other example I think of is that new gym in Skybrook. Over in the Odessa area, it's called EOS. That parking lot's slammed all the time.
I'm sorry, say it.
That parking lot's slammed all the time.
Yeah, I went by there the other day and they were parked in the right of way right on the side of 54.
Yes.
I mean,
and I'm not saying maybe that gym's particularly popular right now. Maybe that,
right.
but that's again, they start parking in the street. It affects the neighbors who live there because we're building a school there. So those neighbors were complaining to us about, even before our school's there, they're complaining to us about the gym parking being full all the time.
And I think we all know that if we go out to Wiregrass, do you have to circle the parking lot for a parking space? I went to Walmart at 54 in Little Road the Saturday before Christmas. I'm going to tell you something. One, I had to circle the parking lot twice before I got in a parking space. And then the person who was with me when we left the store literally got in a physical altercation with somebody over a parking space. Now, mind you, this is the Saturday before Christmas. I'm glad everybody had the Yuletide cheer, but I mean, these parking spaces do get used. And the retailers know what they need. The big boys do. I understand.
So, John, I guess Terry, Brad, they were tasked with coming up with some revision by the board. Okay, if I'm correct, we're just here to provide a recommendation of what the board directed them to do, or what they think the board directed them to do.
Well, go ahead.
Is the biggest concern that, I mean, maybe it's not just directly John, but I mean, is the biggest concern that the maximums are too low and we don't think there should be the minimums are too low and we don't think there should be maximums? I mean, is that a good summary?
I don't believe that the board, well, first off, I spoke to the commissioner, a commissioner, and the commissioner's assistant, and was told that board direction comes from the dais. And no board direction was ever given from the dais on this particular subject. What we were told during the first presentation was that they went and met with individual commissioners and got consensus, whatever that is.
So, I mean, I don't know that we're ever going to come to an agreement here.
Well,
so I guess at the end of the day, do we just provide a recommendation so this at least goes to the board for them, let them hash it out?
Jamie, that's my thinking. I understand Commissioner Starkey would like to achieve her goals, and I don't want to be in the way of that.
Sure.
But she told me what her goals are. I don't think this ordinance does it, but I'd like to personally, if it's me, of course, I gotta get everybody's vote here, is to recommend what I know she wants, and then, we can circle back to all of this later. This doesn't have to get done this week, but the things that they want done now, it seems like we could recommend them to do that.
So, I think you have kind of two options, in my opinion. I mean, you could ask that it be continued again, but I'm not sure if the product you'll get from what Brad's telling me is going to be materially different. So, if that's the case, you may be better off doing kind of like what you did on the park impact fee. I mean, you all had some clear disagreements with staff on the park impact fee, and you made very pointed recommendations on it. The board didn't agree with you.
Right.
But you made your voice very clear on the park impact fee as to what needed to change, and staff put those recommendations in the agenda memo. Staff explained why they disagreed with it, and the board agreed with staff and not you. Okay, that could happen again on parking, or maybe the board says we agree with the planning commission this time. But either way, staff will outline at a minimum, they're going to outline whatever you recommend in the agenda memo to the board.
Right.
So I think if you want changes, the staff other than Jamie and I's technical minor tweaks that we talked about in the beginning here, it didn't sound like they had any major issues with those. But if on the bigger major policy issue, I would just recommend what you think, how the ordinance needs to change, and then
so basically approve not recommend it, but then say, this is what we think.
Well,
and then the board, it's up to the board.
What you did with park impact fees is you recommended, I don't want to get all the iterations of what you did on park impact fees, but you generally recommended approval if the following changes were made to the ordinance. So it sounds like you are at least in agreement that the minimums in our code need to be reduced. So there's some aspect of this ordinance that you agree with. So it sounds like what you need to do is say you recommend approval if the following was changed. I mean, if you want the maximums removed, say that. If you want the minimums adjusted, say that. Whatever it is that you think needs to happen, I would just, because otherwise, quote what I said one time, I believe in democracy, but where it's 5 o'clock.
5:02.
Okay, but so at some point,
that addresses what Brad was saying before, right? Because you were saying, there's a mess out there. The minimums were too high in the past. So if we reduce the minimums going forward and eliminate maximums, that's I think the flavor of what everybody's saying. That's what you're saying, right?
Well, I think reducing minimums were appropriate.
Yeah. Yes, were appropriate. And then, but I still don't think there should be a maximum.
And we know that there is an appeal process as well. That's what you said.
Right.
So I don't think that you necessarily need to craft exact language. because you didn't do that with park impact fees. All you said was, we recommend approval if these 4 things are added to the ordinance. Okay, so I think you just need to do the same thing here. Somebody needs to make a motion and say what.
So John, why don't you craft a motion real quick?
Mr. Chairman. I would recommend.
Excuse me, one second, John.
I just wanted to note one.
Terry wants to say something.
Torres Pitos, Planning and Economic Growth. I just wanted to make one note for the record that this, updating the parking code and the land development code was a board priority. It was a tertiary or a secondary priority when they established their land development code priorities a few years ago. I don't remember the exact date, 2017, 16, somewhere around there. We've had a number of priority amendments that have come through over the years. We remember things like airport zoning, things like that. This was on the same list of priorities that came through. So it's not that this was being brought forward without any board direction. There was board direction for that. And then when we met with the board to commence the project, they were presented with the options for maximums and minimums. And based on the polling that we did at the time, which was August, July-ish timeframe, it was the case that they favored the ordinance as being presented to the Planning Commission. Now, if that position has changed, we'll have to go back to the board members and talk to them again.
They can still vote for that.
But the consensus that I've got and the feedback that I've gotten over the years from multiple stakeholders, people don't want to recreate US 19 on places like State Route 54 or 301.
Weigh our opinion, right, and still vote for that.
That's because the 1970s.
Right? But that's what we're here to do, is provide that opinion.
Let Terry finish.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that a lot of people feel like it's too late for 54 or 56 or 301 or wherever, because the 1970s code is still in place. So, you know, this is it may appear as a drastic change, but I think over the years, we've attempted to moderate the 1970s code with things like a lot of alternative standards. So I would just put that out there for the Planning Commission to consider. I understand the direction that the Planning Commission wants to take, but just keep in mind that, you know, it's not that easy to redevelop parking lots. If it was that easy to redevelop parking lots, lots of places would have fewer parking lots. We have an entire corridor, county line to county line. It's got a lot of parking lot in front of it. I'm talking about 19. And a lot of times parking lots are convoluted and constricted and restrained by covenants and corporate agreements that prevent any further use of that parking lot. So if we can constrain the amounts of parking lot on the site and maximize the productive value of the property by putting buildings on there, it'll be a better outcome for the county in terms of using the most limited resource that the county has, which is its land.
Terry, with all due respect, I've done a lot of shopping centers in my day, and I've been on the engineering end of them, and I've been on the developer side of them, so I'm well aware of restrictive covenants, declarations, easements, and so on and so forth. We're not going to change how the development community does business, right? That's not our job. Our job is to make sure we get a good product for our community, but we're not going to change how to do business. I don't want to go down that road, and I have absolutely not comfortable telling somebody, deciding for somebody else what I think is a good use or not a good use for their property. They bought it, they own it, they bought it knowing what the zoning was, what was allowed, what was not allowed, and who am I to come in and tell them, no, I don't think your use of that space as parking is a good use. That's not my job. And you don't want me to come tell you what I think you can do with your backyard.
And again, I don't think you're going to see people develop.
I move that for the moment, we leave chapter 907, is that the parking one here? Section 907 alone. We don't change it, but we add the following exceptions. We reduce retail parking by 20% from the current minimum, so that you don't need, so you only need to provide 80% of what the current parking is, that there be no maximums, that we provide a defined way for an applicant to request a reduction by presentation of data, parking study, et cetera, if they want to reduce parking below the current minimums.
Outside of the current alt standard process? A different process?
Well,
that's
if that's
applicable?
the, if that's.
We have the alt standard that does that right now, so that can happen.
Okay, all right, that's fine. That's fine. And that we change the parking for multifamily to 1.9 spaces per unit, so that we don't have to grant an alternative standard every time somebody comes in here and asks for multifamily inside an MPUD.
Is that aside from the visitor parking, or is that inclusive of?
I think that's, unfortunately, Ms. Wilhite, who said she was going to stay here, didn't. But I think
It
that
would be
generally
inclusive.
includes their visitor
The alt standard too.
parking.
Are you also proposing removal of maximums?
I would also recommend that the single-family and townhome parking as presented in this ordinance stay in the ordinance. The commissioners have made it clear they want more parking for townhomes and they want more parking for single-family detached, and I agree with them, especially when we have these 45-foot lot subdivisions that we recognize the parking problems. Something Jamie said earlier, and I would also move that the minimum parallel parking space on a street be at least 9 feet wide. The DOT allows vehicles up to 102 inches, which is more than 8 feet wide to drive down the road, so you don't want them trying to park on the space.
So just to clarify your motion, there's other stuff in staff's proposed ordinance, like bicycle parking, changing, allowing relief on compact spaces.
I think it needs more work, as we can always come back to these things. I'm not telling this, my motion, I'm not moving that the staff not bring this back to us. If they want to study this more and go back and fix all these things with the bicycle parking, like Jamie pointed out earlier, go to it, bring it back. But I think the commissioners want something today. I don't want to hold up the process, so that's what I'm willing to recommend today. If they want to come back.
So all the other miscellaneous changes in the ordinance are not part of your motion? I just want to make sure.
If you want the automotive and fuel station, it's in.
You're talking about the.
Well, we started the motion with leave it as is except for the following. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, was it?
I just want to make sure that we're clear that that means.
None of this other stuff.
None of the other stuff that's presented would be part of your motion. I'm not trying to get into weight of the policy. I just want to clarify what your motion is.
Yes.
Okay, so it's leave it as is except for the things that you said.
Yes.
Okay.
And as is has no there's no
right.
maximums. As is has no maximums, correct?
Yes, no, absolutely no maximums.
Okay.
Can we repeat the motion? I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Because so it's the current ordinance or this proposed ordinance?
No, he's talking about as currently, the code is currently written.
Okay.
With the following.
Forget what we've presented today. It's the current ordinance.
He's saying,
with those
forget
changes.
what staff has presented. He wants the code as currently written with the following changes and say them again.
Following changes are reduction in retail parking by 20% from the current minimum, which I think now is 1 per 300. I'm sorry, because I can't do the math in my head real good.
So, yeah.
Okay.
One per 240.
No maximums.
Well, that's not in the current code anyway, so you don't really need to say that.
That's right.
Then we change multifamily parking to 1.9 spaces per unit. That we amend 907 to include the single-family and townhome parking as presented in this ordinance, because the commissioners want that increased, and this tended to increase that. Yes, I agree with you. And I agree with Mr. Tippett, they can apply for an alt standard if they want to reduce
that's in the existing code, so that doesn't really need to be made part of your motion. So I'm trying to keep it simple.
And exclude everything else that's recommended.
And I
For the time
also
being.
will include that we adopt staff's recommendation of the changes to section 525.4 and the definition of fuel station. Fine with that.
Everybody clear on the motion?
Just one clarification, John Moody had also stated the minimum parallel parking space on street to be 9
Should be
feet
at
wide.
least 9 feet.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
So other than what John, his motion is other than what the changes he recommended, the code would stay as its existing form. That's the motion.
Okay, I'd second that.
And just to clarify, the 9 feet is outside of curb and gutter? Because that's the change that we've been making, that was reducing it to 8. You're just trying to clarify with this, so we can make it simple and say 9 feet.
It's 9 feet and it can't be in the travel lane. That's what it says in the ordinance today.
Okay.
Me and Jamie will go argue about whether you should block the gutter or not later, but we're
Yeah, there is other things that need to be addressed, obviously, and, you know, but we can, that makes sense. We can get to that, you know, after some more work on it. But this accomplishes the short-term goal.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I second it already.
Okay, any further discussion of the motion?
Yeah, I guess just to, before I vote, I'm gonna vote against it. Now, the only reason I'm gonna vote against it is not because I support the way it's written, but I think there's a lot of other good things in here that should be considered. So I would support and be behind it, an alternative motion or alternative recommendation, so.
Okay.
Just explaining that.
All right. So any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Let's have a roll call. In favor of the motion?
Nay.
Mr. Derek Rotlitz?
Aye.
Mr. Jonathan Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Christopher Poole?
Aye.
Mr. Chris Williams?
Aye.
Chairman Charles Gray?
Nay. For the same reason that I think there are some other things that should be
But we can
addressed.
get to that.
Yeah,
You can do that.
3-3?
So the motion
Wait.
fails.
Yeah, but I already voted.
He voted.
You voted, yeah.
Well, actually.
Well, he shouldn't vote.
He probably should not have voted.
Well, the school was in there.
Well, the school was in there.
Oh,
why
that's
I-
true. It does affect the infrastructure for school.
Okay, so
Isn't that
if the
4-2?
motion fails.
Wasn't
No,
it
that-
4-2?
Wait,
Who
it's actually-
voted nay?
Yeah, it should
I
have
thought there was
You
only two.
and Chuck.
Me and Chuck.
Yeah, there were only
It
two.
should have been
nays.
4-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were only two.
4-2,
nays.
yeah.
Is that accurate? Do we need to do it again, or you?
Yeah, can we just do it one more time?
Okay.
Don't change your vote.
Jamie Girardi?
Nay.
Mr. Derek Rotlitz?
Aye.
Mr. John Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Christopher Poole?
Aye.
Mr. Chris Williams?
Aye.
Chairman Charles Gray?
Nay.
Now we know why it was confused.
Darn it.
That was funny.
He's gonna throw a whip in there now, whip in there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you only get one vote.
Now,
It's election
before-
season.
Yes.
If you would oblige me, I realize we finished the consideration of that, but they may bring this back in some other form in the future, and we'll have to see what the commissioners would do. Are you willing to tell us what your alternative might have been?
I mean, the alternative, I think there's a lot of good things in here. I think the minimums are set too low, and I don't think there should be a maximum. I mean, I think they need to go back and relook
What are the
at
things
the
that,
minimums.
what are the good things, so that if this comes back.
Well, I think
we
the
get-
splitting out and the adjustments in the bicycle parking, I think a lot of the, there's a lot of the alternative text amendments in here, I think clean up a lot of the things that aren't in the current ordinance. But again, that stuff can come back, but my point was it was already done and it was already here, so you could go ahead and move forward with it, but.
And I have, we'll just say on the record, I have no objection to you bringing this back, these other things back. to
Oh,
address
absolutely,
the
yeah.
things that
No, we're on the right track, for
Jamie
sure.
and Mr. Gray have.
And And I would just add, you made some changes to the school and reference statute, which I was fine with. But again, I agree with what Mr. Moody's motion was, and we're doing okay the way we are, but I wouldn't mind seeing it go back to how you changed it either, so I'm fine with some tweaks there.
And I'm glad we didn't continue it.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sure that they are too. And thank you for the hard work, for I know it's difficult to please everybody, so.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
So, and we didn't get into this whole
Thank you.
business of live local in the bill that passed the Senate yesterday. They've opted to tell us that we have to reduce, is it vertically integrated mixed-use parking for live local by 20%, but there's some criteria that goes with that too, so.
Yeah, I'm not really prepared to, I mean, first of all, it only passed the Senate, it does not pass the House. I don't think it'll change materially in the House, but that being said,
So nothing happened with the fixed bill then?
the bill that was passed by the Senate does not address Pasco County's major issues with local law. So I don't see our board stance changing, so I recognize what Mr. Moody's saying, but you have to understand that I have board direction to sue any project that tries to invoke the local act. So I'm not sure I will get an application that seeks to reduce parking because or if they do, they'll be tied up in litigation for the next 2 years. So I'm not particularly concerned about that provision currently.
All right. Having completed our business.
Did we
Ms.
behave?
Denise? Huh?
Did we behave?
I don't know. Liz, did they behave?
She hasn't left.
Yeah, she didn't leave the meeting.
good.
She didn't storm out of the meeting, so I guess you did fine.
She gave.
And again, she rode with me, so
She did
she had
give
a choice.
She did give John a dirty look, though.
All right, Mr. Chair, I make a motion
All right.
to adjourn.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Third.
Okay, thank you.
Pasco County waterways and wildlife depend on you to keep them healthy. Excess fertilizer, grass clippings, trash, oils, and pet waste wash into gutters and storm drains when it rains. Stormwater carries these pollutants directly into our lakes and rivers, creating an unhealthy environment for fish, waterfowl, and other aquatic animals. Storm drains are meant for clean rainwater. Most other discharges are illegal.